black-haired man was inside the lab, busy doing an experiment. Every action follows a certain process. When water molecules move really fast, they create heat, causing the water to get hotter and eventually boil. The man watched the entire cooking process with curiosity. This was his special mental trick. Soon, whatever was in the flasks was ready. It turned out he was making black coffee. The dark-haired man then called out to someone. 3 girls walked up to him right away. Each of them was beautiful in her own unique way. They smiled and leaned in close to him, clearly impressed. The guy's name was Shaw. The guy found himself in a completely different world, filled with new adventures and opportunities. Shaw spent his days looking up information about this mysterious place online and used his mind magic to come up with clever tricks. Fate had given him this new and exciting life. All of it began just 2 years ago. He was a creative video streamer who loved showing cool inventions made from everyday items that anyone could find at home. The show started its channel on its 20th anniversary, and after 3 months, it had already gained a certain number of subscribers. Only 5 people showed up, which made the guy feel a bit disappointed. Still, Shaw believed his channel could have a brighter future. He thought that if he kept posting new videos every day, eventually someone would discover his work, and the number of viewers would suddenly grow a lot. Even though he was disappointed by the channel's low subscriber count, he quickly grabbed his camera that same day and headed out to make a brand new video. Suddenly, the guy found himself in the middle of the forest with his backpack beside him. Confused and a little scared, he quickly emptied out everything from his backpack to see what he had with him. Inside his backpack, he had useful items like a towel, a lighter, a plate, some chocolate, a container, and a multi-tool. He felt grateful for having these things with him. Shaw looked at his phone but saw there was no signal, and the battery was almost dead because he forgot to charge it. But suddenly, Shaw snapped out of it. He looked around in shock and fear, realizing he had no idea where he was. After taking a moment to calm himself, Shaw started looking for a way out of the forest. He had spent years hiking since he was a kid, so he usually knew his way around the woods. But as he walked, he realized he didn't recognize any of the plants. Everything looked completely unfamiliar to him. These thoughts scared him a lot. He started to wonder if he had somehow ended up in an ancient forest that had grown wild over time. Shaw even began to think that maybe he was in the afterlife or had been transported to a completely different world. Suddenly, rain began to pour down in the forest. The guy knew he had to find shelter quickly. As he looked for a place to hide, he started to wonder if he had somehow ended up in a completely different world. Shaw took cover from the rain inside a hollow tree, lost in thoughts about a different world. Around him, there was nothing magical, just the ordinary forest and silence. The man hadn't been to this forest for a long time. Sitting by the campfire at night, he felt sad and wished he had met some girls. He realized he didn't want to live a lonely life like this. The next day, the man spent hours wandering through the forest, looking for someone. He moved slowly, using a wooden stick to help him walk. Suddenly, Shaw came to a halt. A small field of white flowers appeared right in front of him. The guy noticed how big the flower was. He thought the flowers looked a bit like banansies, but those usually have 3 petals and are smaller than these. Shaw also saw that the ends of the petals looked a bit see-through, almost like a sunflower. Suddenly, the flowers started to shake and wilt. At the same time, shiny black beads slowly appeared on them. Shaw couldn't believe his eyes. He pulled out his phone to record this incredible scene, full of colors he'd never seen before. Unfortunately, his phone died, so he had to put it away. Shaw walked over to the flowers and picked out a bead. Curious, the guy examined the flowers, wondering if they might be safe to eat. The guy kept moving without stopping until he reached a waterfall. Tired, Shaw sat down on a rock to rest. As he caught his breath, he started wondering if there might be other people nearby. Suddenly, a sharp pain hit him. It turned out that a big bug, either a tick or a spider, had bitten him. Terrified, Shaw tried to pull the creature off his hand, but it wouldn't let go. Soon after, he fainted. After some time, the man still didn't wake up and thought his life was over. He saw a blurry figure that looked like an angel, but as the image became clearer, he realized it was actually a beautiful girl. She noticed that he had opened his eyes. Shaw was amazed by how beautiful she was, and for a moment he felt like he was in heaven. The girl, however, had no idea what he meant. She nervously grabbed the magic staff. The girl was curious about who he really was and wondered if Camillo had sent him. Shaw had never heard of Camillo, so he disagreed with her. He didn't think he looked suspicious at all. So to avoid any misunderstanding, he introduced himself to the girl. She was surprised because she had never heard a name like his before. Shaw thanked her sincerely for helping him out. The girl introduced herself as Rubia. She explained that the show stopped because he got bitten by a spider and fainted. Rubia used magic to help him recover. She also offered to let him stay at her place until he feels well again. Shaw finally understood that the girl was using magic, which meant he really had stepped into another world. The girl turned away from him, clearly distracted by something that had grabbed her attention. Rubia was really interested in the strange object the guy had. She was a curious girl and wanted to find out what it was. The guy noticed she was holding a container and explained to her that he had found it in the forest. Then the man opened the container and began to explain. He said he saw some lovely white flowers on his way, but sadly, they faded and died. Afterward, bright red berries grew where the flowers had been. Rubia's eyes lit up with joy as she looked inside the container, because she recognized those little red fruits. They were mirch berries. Shaw didn't know what these berries were or why they mattered. He just took in the information quietly. Then, to Rubia's surprise, he offered the berries to her. After all, she had helped him. Rubia was shocked. These berries were worth a lot. The guy couldn't understand why she was so nervous. He didn't think the flowers were special or rare because he saw lots of them around. They were pretty close to where he had fainted. Shaw offered to go together and look at the flowers. The girl blushed and looked at him, surprised and a little embarrassed. Then Rubia shyly and quietly agreed to the guy's idea. Shaw couldn't figure out why she was acting so strangely. He stared at her, clearly puzzled by her reaction. From that day forward, Shaw moved into Ruby's tiny house and started living with her. He soon realized he had ended up in a completely different world. This place felt just like the Middle Ages from his own world. No gas, no running water, no electricity, and nothing modern at all. Everything was done the old, hard way, and Shaw even struggled just to pull water from the well. He doesn't see any floating status screens in front of him. On top of that, a spider attacked him, even though monsters hardly ever go after him. This whole experience is nothing like the usual reincarnation stories he's heard about. As the guy was lost in thought about reincarnation, a girl walked over and used a bit of magic to help him light the fireplace. Rubia then invited him to join her for a meal. He looked at everything that had happened with a surprised look on his face. Shaw was amazed by the magic. So he started to talk quietly and looked a bit shy. The guy with black hair realized it wasn't the best time to question Rubia right after she had just helped him. But still, he politely asked her if she could teach him some magic. After his request, Shaw respectfully bowed to her. It's been some time. The girl told him that she couldn't teach him magic unless he officially became her student. Only then, as his teacher, would she really be allowed to train him. Being a true master is just like being a scientist or an engineer. Rubia had an official master's certificate, which looked like a pendant on a chain. Many people who love magic study it by themselves and can be pretty unusual. For Rubia, being a true scientist meant always asking why things happen and searching for the real answers. To her, magic was just a way of exploring and understanding this process. Ignoring this connection would be like doing things backwards, putting the cart before the horse. Shaw understood what the girl said. Magic sounded pretty useful to him. He cleared his throat to get everyone's attention, ready to speak. He didn't like always relying on a girl to help him, so he wanted to find a job of his own. Ruby suggested that Shaw could become a real scientist or do something else important. But the man didn't agree with her. Instead, Shaw dropped to his knees, bowed to the girl, and begged Rubius to let him become his student. The girl felt uneasy about it. Not everyone is cut out to be a true master, after all. First, someone needs to make sure the boy has what it takes. Shaw, though, was willing to do anything to learn magic. The girl asked the guy if he believed in God. He looked a bit confused, but replied honestly. Shaw said with confidence that he didn't believe in God. But he has never seen God and only believes what he can see with his own eyes. Even if someone important says it, he still needs proof. Unless he experiences something himself, he thinks it might not be the whole truth. The girl then asked him if he had ever seen any miracles from God. But Shaw had never seen a real miracle himself. If miracles do happen, he believed there's always a reason and a logical explanation. He spoke about this with real confidence. If someone searches for answers and values the truth, they can even understand and use miracles in their own way. Ruby stared at the guy in amazement. His answer was just what you'd expect from someone who truly wants to be a real scientist. The girl asked who the guy really was. She told him this was only a practice round. The real challenge was still coming. After some time, the boy and girl stepped outside. Ruby assigned her assistant to manage the stove and asked the boy to try lighting it. Shaw was caught off guard by the request, but if he could recall the basics, a bit of magic would guide him through. The girl stayed quiet after hearing those words. She realized things would be really tough for the guy. Shaw was deep in thought, wondering how magic really worked. He realized that to make something burn, you need heat, so he started thinking about different ways to create heat. When air gets squeezed, it heats up. That's actually the basic principle behind how car engines work. Shaw realized that by simply compressing air, you can generate heat. As soon as the guy pictured it in his mind, a ball of heat appeared right in his hands. Rubia couldn't believe her eyes. He made something out of nothing in just a second. Shaw gently pushed the ball of heat with his hand, guiding it right onto the firewood in the fireplace. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, all at once, the heat ball burst into flames and set the firewood on fire. The demonstration was a complete success. But something didn't go as planned. The heat ball was way too strong, and suddenly the entire fireplace burst into flames and exploded. Rubia was thrown to the ground in shock, her face and clothes now covered in ash. The sorceress turned to the boy, wanting to know why he had used magic in the first place. Shaw admitted he needed something to start a fire in the fireplace, so he decided to try lighting it by compressing air. The girl was amazed by what he said. He was just an ordinary guy, with no training from any real expert. She couldn't figure out how he managed to do it. Rubia nodded at the man's idea. The theory made sense, but wouldn't really work in practice. In this situation, doing it that way just wouldn't help. He needed to come up with a reason for the fire to start. The man considered the situation. Here, the fire started because the carbon in the wood reacted with the oxygen in the air, creating what some call a gorongi element. Shaw was deep in thought. He wasn't focusing on the ignition image like he was supposed to, but Rubia told him the image didn't really matter. All he had to do was picture the gorongi phenomenon in his mind. At that moment, he focused entirely on the compounds of carbon and oxygen. Suddenly, he felt magic gather in his hand, and almost instantly, the firewood caught fire. Suddenly, the fire sparked back to life, and a massive burst of flames shot out from the chimney, but this time there was no explosion. Somehow, the fire managed to keep burning. Shaw felt proud when he saw the fire burning brightly. He watched the flames in the fireplace with a big smile. Rubia was amazed by how talented and strong he was. She couldn't believe he figured out how magic worked after just one hint. The guy happily reminded her to accept his student, while your girl was still surprised by everything that just happened. That's how Shaw became Ruby's student, learning from a true master. He didn't realize that using magic, by simply understanding how things work, was unique. Shaw thought anyone could do it, but the people here didn't even know simple science. The guy was excited to find out that magic was actually really easy for him. He thought it would make an awesome topic for his next video. With this idea, he's sure he can hit over 10 million subscribers. Now that number finally feels possible, not just a daydream. When Shaw started learning from Rubia, his life became much more exciting. Besides doing chores like cleaning, chopping wood, and getting water, he now also helps her gather plants and insects for his research. They walked through the forest together. Rubia watched a beautiful butterfly with wonder. Now and then, Shaw stopped to try out some magic tricks, which was really fun to watch. Suddenly, a girl called out to them. She asked Shaw if he knew anything about how air compression works. This guy understood that when air expands, it actually gets colder, unlike when it's compressed and warms up. If you make atoms or particles vibrate, they heat up, but if you slow down their movement, they start to cool off. Shaw wanted to say more, but he stopped himself. The girl was surprised that this guy knew so much. Rubia also noticed he was really polite. It's not often you meet someone who's both smart and well-mannered. However, the girl was curious about where the guy learned all this. Shaw lied and said he was just an ordinary student back in his home country. Rubia believed that people from his country must be very well educated. However, Shaw had actually left school back in his home country. That's why he felt awkward when the girl mentioned it. Still, he was really impressed by how good the education was in Japan. Soon they reached the river. The girl told him that if he was good at logic, he wouldn't need much training. It meant he could learn other types of magic very quickly. Meanwhile, Shaw was busy doing something in the water. The man picked up a small stone and tapped it on the water's surface. After a moment, fish began to float up, completely still and motionless. When the man struck a rock underwater, the shock waves stunned the fish. Shaw didn't need to catch them by hand. He simply picked them up after they floated up. After that, the man cleaned and cut the fish, then left them on a rock. Then Shaw used magic to dry the pieces of fish. The fish quickly lost its moisture, part of a process that helps turn proteins into amino acids. Next, Shaw used a different kind of magic, this time, the magic of fermentation. In just a moment, the dried fish was ready. The guy smiled, realizing how helpful magic could be. He hung the fish neatly on a stick. Time went by, and the guy learned to use all kinds of magic. Shaw used his powers to light fires, warm things up, and even cool things down when he needed to. He also used the magic of fermentation and plant growth in his daily life, which helped his crops grow faster. Magic made him lighter too, so now he could easily lift heavy things. Magic that worked with physical things was pretty straightforward and didn't need special spells. It was called basic or initial magic. It was easy to use, but incredibly helpful for everyday situations. Magic was usually used for small things. For example, he could start a fire in a pot, but he couldn't set the whole place on fire. He could warm up a pot of water, but not heat up a whole pond. Still, if used cleverly, magic could be used to attack. One day, while cooking, a man was lost in thought about using magic. For example, heating magic works just like a microwave oven. Someone could use it on a person, making all the water in their body boil at once and destroying them instantly. The guy felt uneasy thinking about it. That would be a truly horrible way to go. Soon the meal was ready. Rubia admired how delicious the dishes looked and smelled. The food tasted wonderful. She saw honey spread on the bread and grew curious, had the bees ever stung him. But he explained they hadn't, since he used a bit of magic on the hive before collecting the honey. If Shaw had just taken a small amount of honey, the hive would have been fine later. He felt bad and realized he should build another hive for the bees. Rubia enjoyed the honey, pleasantly surprised that the guy could actually cook. He had never really mastered cooking, but he always found the process itself really interesting. Shaw simply enjoyed doing things himself. If he messed up a recipe, he'd just try again without getting upset. He was happy to eat whatever he made, no matter how it turned out. After finishing his meal, Shaw stepped outside and saw lots of plants that looked like bamboo growing near the house. These plants were called tekerdo. Shaw noticed they were easy to work with and could be useful for many different purposes. Suddenly, the man at the tekerdo booth hurt his hand a little. Shaw regretted not wearing gloves. Then, the man remembered a conversation he did not long ago. Shaw asked Rubia if healing magic was real. She told him that it does exist. Then Shaw wondered if this magic could fix any illness or injury. But healing magic wasn't a miracle cure. It simply boosted the body's natural healing process. That's why it couldn't help if a disease was just starting or already too far advanced. The guy was eager to ask the girl more about healing magic, but he knew he couldn't use it here right now. The girl told him not to even think about trying it out. After recalling their talk, Shaw quickly put on his gloves and chopped the bamboo. He smoothly slid a thinner piece inside the cut bamboo, then pushed the finished structure into the ground with no trouble. A glowing swirl of magic formed in his hands. He aimed the ball of compressed air right at the bamboo tube and sent it inside. The air shot smoothly into the tube. Quickly, he plugged the end with a thicker piece of bamboo, sealing it. Then he slowly released the pressure. As soon as the air pressure dropped, the bamboo cork shot straight up into the air. Shaw saw what happened and burst out laughing. The experiment had worked perfectly. If he had recorded it, kids in school would probably have loved it and made it popular. The man was trying to figure out how to charge his phone. He wanted to record a video of his experiment, but there was no power around. Suddenly, he heard someone's voice, which caught his attention. He turned to see where the sound was coming from. A horse-drawn carriage waited outside a wooden house. A group of girls walked up and stood by the door, hoping someone inside would let them in. Out of the 4 girls, 2 wore maid outfits. They were here to see Rubia. Shaw, hidden under a tree, watched them with curiosity since he didn't know any of the girls. There were 4 girls in the group. 2 of them, one with glasses and one with cat ears, were dressed as maids. Another girl wore a sparkling tiara and looked very elegant, like a real aristocrat. Standing beside her was her bodyguard, making sure she was safe. Ruby bowed her head and greeted the princess formally, but the princess didn't like it. She wished Ruby would just talk to her like a regular person. Frowning, the irritated blonde woman asked why the princess had come. Meanwhile, the girl with her had already slipped inside the house. The blonde woman believed the princess's reason for showing up was pretty clear. The sorceress assumed the visit was another invitation and remembered she had turned the girl down many times before. But this time, the princess had come for a different reason. There were now rumors about Rubia spreading through the castle. The stories were about the famous witch from Farain who found a small bird and decided to keep it. They also mentioned that a girl was seen walking around town, shopping for men's clothes and other things. Suddenly, Shaw walked into the room, surprising all the girls. They weren't expecting him, so maybe the rumors about him were true after all. Feeling a bit awkward, Shaw offered to make everyone some tea. He was confused about being called the little bird, and honestly, he didn't even know what to say next. Rubia, however, was surprised and a bit irritated that these girls came all this way just to discuss something so minor. She felt bad for taking up the princess's time, but the princess didn't mind at all. She was just casually stopping by Rubia's place on her way back from work. Soon, Shaw prepared some tea and offered it to the guests. The young man walked up to the princess and introduced himself, saying he was a student from Rubia. The princess was curious because she had never heard anyone with a name like his, not even among foreigners. But the man didn't seem to notice. He made some special treats from his home country for the princess. When she saw the dessert, she was surprised. She even wondered if it was made from a cow. But that's not what happened. Shaw brought the princess some chocolate and told her it was really sweet and tasty. Then he invited her to give it a try. Rubia and the princess glanced at the chocolate slice, a little unsure about it, but curiosity won and they both took a bite at the same time. As soon as they tasted it, their cheeks flushed with delight. Their cheeks blushed with excitement as they tasted the wonderful sweetness of chocolate, enjoying every bit as it slowly melted in their mouths. The princess was amazed because she had never tasted such delicious food before. Rubia turned to the man with the lamp, curious to learn more about chocolate and how it was made. Shaw explained that chocolate probably comes from grinding nuts found on faraway southern islands and mixing them with sugar, then blending everything together until it's really smooth. The princess considered the offer, since sugar was really precious and hard to find in this region. The girl asked the guy if he had any chocolate left. Shaw said there was only a little, so the princess asked if she could buy all that was left. Excited, she asked how much it would cost, and then she offered Shaw 3 gold coins. The guy quickly understood he was being given 3 gold coins. In this world, 2 silver coins were enough to live on for a whole month. Since 2 silver coins were worth about 100,000 yen, 3 gold coins added up to 600,000 yen. He was thrilled to get so much money. Soon Shaw got his 3 gold coins, and the princess took a full chocolate bar. She felt bad that she couldn't invite Rubia to the castle again. Still, Rubia was happy because she now had a big bar of chocolate. After that, the princess said goodbye and closed the door behind her. Rubia and Shaw stood quietly, looking at the closed door. Suddenly, the princess called out to them again. Curious, the teacher and student stepped outside into the courtyard, still puzzled about why the princess hadn't left their home. The princess was really interested in the strange device by the well. She asked Shaw what it was, and he explained that it's a buzzing pump, a tool he uses to pull water up from deep inside the well. After he explained, the man showed her how the pump worked. The princess was amazed when water started flowing out. She thought it was pure magic. But that wasn't true. It was just a simple trick that anyone could do. So the girl tried pushing the pump's handle herself, and right away, water started flowing out. The princess was curious about what the device was for. At that moment, Shaw handed her a piece of bamboo. It was a water toy, and he showed her how it worked, making water squirt out in a fun way. The princess picked up the bamboo toy, her eyes full of curiosity. Then, as the girl tried it out, a stream of water suddenly shot from the toy. Water splashed all over the maid with cat ears, making her meow and dash away from the spray. The princess laughed and aimed more water at her, while the maid tried her best to dodge and hide. Shaw told the girl that if you cover the hole in the toy, the water stays inside. The princess understood what he meant. Then, when the guy asked a question, the girl figured out that if there was a hole on the other side, the water would shoot out towards her. Now she finally understood how the man got water from the well. When the pump goes up and down, it creates a vacuum inside the pipe. As the piston lifts, the water is pushed up by pressure. It felt like watching real experts work their magic. The princess was really impressed by the guy's pump device, so she asked Shaw once again if he would sell her a buzzing pump. After the princess gave her idea, she started to climb the brightly lit well. Shaw worried about her safety, but the girl kept going until she stood tall on top of the well. As she stood there, she remembered when the young man introduced himself and told her his name. Now it was her turn to speak. Her name was Leela Farain. To Shaw's surprise, Leela was actually the leader of the entire Farain nation. Shaw felt a sudden jolt of shock as he realized he was talking to someone so important. The girl kept speaking, sounding confident and proud as she invited the guy to visit her castle. Leela wanted Shaw to say yes to her invitation. After some time, the carriage began moving slowly and quietly. Inside, Shaw sat in deep thought, his backpack by his side, remembering his recent talk with the princess. He had told Layla that he was still just a young student, but that didn't seem to bother her at all. All she really cared about were his skills. If he already knew so much, there was no way he was just a beginner. The girl also told the guy that the government would give him free food and clothes, and he would get paid 3 gold coins every month. He was shocked by how much that was 600,000 yet a month. For the guy, all these offers sounded really attractive. Now he just needed to get used to living in this world for a while. After all, having money made everything better. So the guy gladly accepted Princess Layla's offer, but before he could answer, Ruby called out in frustration. She reminded him that it was only an invitation, and he wasn't required to say yes. The man was eager to say yes because the offer was really tempting. Princess Leela was willing to do whatever it took for the show, which amazed Rubia and left her speechless. Right away, Princess Layla started to threaten Rubia, warning that she could send her army if Rubia didn't agree. But even with these threats, the sorceress stood her ground and wouldn't give in. Seeing this, the princess decided Shaw should take Rubia's place instead. Rubia just stared quietly at Princess Layla, frowning, while Shaw nervously called out trying to get his master's attention. The distance from the castle to Rubia's home wasn't very far, so Shaw could easily keep up with his schoolwork. However, Rubia wasn't happy with this arrangement. She knew she couldn't leave Shaw, her inexperienced student with such risky ideas, unsupervised. so Ruby decided to take action. If Shaw decides to head to the castle, Rubia will join him too. In the end, the sorceress accepted the princess's offer. Suddenly, the carriage hit a stone in the road, making everyone inside tumble to one side. Shaw had the worst luck. He ended up bumping right into the window. But the guy couldn't really focus on the pain, because Princess Layla distracted him. She leaned against him, her face red as she stared at the black-haired guy. Shaw was also worried about how the princess was feeling. When he spoke to her, his words snapped Layla out of her daze and made her blush even more. Princess Layla quickly pulled away from the boy as soon as she realized what happened. Blushing, she hurried to say she was okay. She sat next to her friends. The maid with glasses was named Ruminis, and the maid with cat ears was called Mimo. Princess Layla was just 15 years old, but she had been ruling the country alone ever since her parents, the king and queen, died in the epidemic. She still felt lost after what just happened and kept wondering if the strange carriage had something to do with it. You could only become ruler at 18, so having a regent was common, but Layla was incredibly talented and knew everything about running the kingdom. She was so skilled that even the ministers couldn't stand in her way. Shaw noticed that Princess Layla was small, but surprisingly strong. She gave him an annoyed look just as the carriage bumped over another rock, making Shaw hit his head again. He couldn't figure out what was wrong with the carriage. It felt really uncomfortable to ride in. The princess told him it was a normal carriage, so nothing was out of the ordinary. At first, he thought maybe the road was just really rough, but that wasn't it either. Then he realized the carriage itself was just too stiff. The princess asked what rigidity meant when talking about a carriage. Shaw told her that a rigid carriage has its axle fixed firmly to the carriage's body. After Shaw explained, the princess became interested and wanted to learn about different types of carriages. The old carriage would work better if it had a suspension system. Princess Layla didn't really get what the guy meant, but Shaw didn't bother explaining. Instead, he just drew a bow with the shape he had in mind and wanted to know if anyone had seen a bow like that before. This type of bow really existed. The artist kept drawing, and soon he sketched a matching bow on the other side. When you put the two together, they make a diamond shape. After adding the final details, you can see that when joined, the shapes can stretch and shrink just like in the picture. Then the guy suggested fixing them to the top of the wheel and running the axle underneath. That way, when the wheels go over big rocks or bumps, the suspension stretches and compresses, keeping the carriage steady and stopping it from swaying. The guy excitedly shared his idea with everyone, but the girls just stared at him in shock. They were amazed by what he came up with. The guy started to feel uncomfortable because he couldn't figure out why no one was saying anything. Shaw believed he had explained the suspension clearly. Suddenly, Princess Layla stood up quickly. The girl wearing a tiara wanted someone to call Russell right away. The maids were concerned because the princess kept moving around. They tried to calm her down, since standing up in a moving carriage was risky. Reseal wasn't there, so they couldn't ask him for help. Shaw was curious about who Reseal was. The maid Ruminis told the young man that Reseal was a skilled craftsman working in the castle's workshop. Just then, a girl called out to him, and Shaw quickly answered her. Princess Layla excitedly told the guy that when they reached the palace, he needed to tell everyone in the workshop about the pendant. They soon reached the castle, where a large workshop came into view. The workshop was open and roomy, with a glowing fireplace at the far end where new inventions took shape. Inside, elves and dwarves worked together with energy and excitement. Princess Layla was eager to find Russell right away. Suddenly, a man with gray hair appeared before them, responding to her call. Russell was caught off guard to see the princess in his workshop. The man started to bow, but noticed the girl seemed happy, so Layla quickly stopped Russell from bowing. The girl was eager to show the man something right away. Soon, a buzzing pump with a lid was set up right in the workshop. When it was turned on, water flowed out perfectly. To make it work, the pump just needed to be placed in a bucket of water. Everyone in the workshop was amazed at how well this invention worked. Russell excitedly told the princess that the pump would be a big hit. The happy princess already knew it would be a success. Shaw started explaining how he made the pump using bamboo. He mentioned that someone wanted to build a pump with iron instead, because bamboo pumps were likely to break easily. The man realized what the other guy meant. He knew the iron device was built to last and would work well for over 10 years. Even though it was going to cost a lot, Princess Layla didn't mind. Money wasn't important to her at all. The girl asked the craftsman to build a sample pump out of iron. After that, Layla decided she wanted to include an extra feature. Princess Layla asked Russell to build a carriage with special suspension. She described how the suspension would make the ride smoother and more comfortable. Russell really liked the idea and realized this new carriage could sell for a high price. The girl understood that if a new, faster carriage came out, the rich royals would spend a lot to get it. This made her happy. Shaw began to explain how the suspension works. He sketched it as a diamond shape, but actually, the suspension is made from several boards of different lengths that are glued together. Rassel wondered why they used several boards of different lengths instead of just one. Sean realized that Rassel was quite sharp and observant. The guy explained how a resonator works by comparing it to jumping on a tree branch. When you keep bouncing, the branch swings more and more. Russell understood right away because he used to do that when he was a kid. Shaw went on to explain that if someone swings too hard, the branch could eventually snap. But if you lay boards of different lengths across the branch, it spreads out the weight and helps stop the branch from breaking. Shaw wants the suspension to be strong, so he first thought about using steel. But since flexible steel is hard to work with, he suggested using high-quality copper instead. Then, smiling, he told me there was a way to design the suspension so it could be replaced often and individual parts could be sold, which would let us make twice as much money. Layla was shocked by what he said. The girl quietly said she liked the show. The guy noticed, surprising her with how observant he was. He smiled warmly at Princess Layla's compliment. Shaw brought up the carriage design once more. He proposed to the craftsman that they make the front wheels adjustable. It might be a bit harder to build, but it would make the carriage much easier to use. The workshop craftsmen understood what the guy was saying. They saw that his idea would make it much easier to steer and turn a carriage. The ride will feel smoother and more comfortable. The event was full of energy from the skilled workers, just as you'd expect from people who build things for a living. They easily caught on to what the presenter was saying, and they were eager to find out even more about how the carriage was designed. After some time, someone responded and pointed the man toward his workshop. Shaw looked at the small hut with excitement. He finally had a place to call his own workshop. Princess Layla told him that inside the castle, he could find all the tools and skilled workers he needed to create anything he could dream of. The girl believed in him, so the young man headed straight to his workshop. Besides the main workshop in the castle, there was also a blacksmith shop run by dwarves. They made all sorts of tools and devices from metal and other materials. The artisan workshop was different. It focused on detailed finishing and engraving, and the elves were in charge there. They added beautiful, artistic touches to everything they made. The guy also saw a big variety of wood in the materials section. Iron was there too, but it was rare and worth a lot. Shaw looked around the whole castle and noticed the maid's room as he passed by. Inside, he recognized some of the maids, Rumani's and New Omi. New Omi was especially happy to see him. Soon, Shaw saw a door appear in front of him. This was the master's office. Rubia took her time packing up, so she ended up arriving late. She started arranging her things around the office. Shaw wanted to help the master, but Rubia politely said no, explaining that if someone else helped, she wouldn't know where everything was. After that, the guy asked Rubia if there were other masters inside the castle. She said yes, there was even an elven master of true knowledge living there. The guy got really excited, knowing that a real elf was in the castle, and he really wanted to meet them. But then Rubia walked right up to him. Standing really close, she told him that the elf was actually very old, and she warned Shaw to stay away from the elven master. The guy couldn't forget Ruby's warning, but her words only made Shaw more curious. He really wanted to see real elves for himself. Then suddenly, he spotted a door jar on the road. Shaw got curious when he saw her and walked over. The strange lighting in the room made him wonder what was inside. Just as he was about to step in, the sharp sound of heels clicking echoed nearby. Suddenly, someone shouted at the guy with a harsh tone, making him jump and spin around. Standing, there was an elf clearly irritated by him. She didn't recognize him, so she assumed he must be an imperial. The elf gave the man a suspicious look, clearly not trusting him yet. She still thought he might be a spy for the Empire. Shaw was surprised by how tall she was. The man gazed up at the elephant, thinking about how elves kept growing taller all their lives. He'd heard that elves could become over 2 meters tall after living for more than 1,000 years. The guy understood that this was the true master Rubio mentioned. The elf glanced at the stranger with annoyance, still not sure if he was a spy. The man quickly told the girl that he wasn't a spy. He nervously explained that he was a student of Master Rubia. The girl quickly shifted her attention, grabbing Shaw's chin and studying his face with curiosity. When the elf heard that Rubia had chosen him as an apprentice, she seemed even more interested in how he looked. After saying that, the girl became curious about how Ruby was doing. She realized she had been a bit rude and hadn't even greeted her coworker. Shaw told the elf that his master was staying at the castle because Rubia needed time to get ready for the move. Then the girl asked why, as Rubia's student, he hadn't come to welcome her. The guy told the girl once more that he was really busy, but Shaw promised her he would stop by later to say hi. He still needed to make things right because the elf wasn't happy about how things were going. However, she quickly brought the guy into her office. The girl realized he didn't know about her connection with Rubia, so she decided to let him take the blame for his boss's rude behavior. Shaw was curious about who the elf was, so she quickly told him her name, Stella. Then Stella said, "If you're really a student from Ruby, you should already know who I am." Shaw introduced himself too and said he was Rubia's student. Then, looking a bit nervous, he started searching in the inside pocket of his jacket for something. He wanted to give her a small gift to celebrate meeting her. Soon the guy found what he was looking for. He opened his hand and showed the girl two bright red berries. To Shaw, this seemed like a pretty special gift. Stella couldn't believe her eyes when she saw the gift. It was a tiny berry, bright red and rare, making it extra special. The girl hesitantly took the gift and pretended to compliment its quality. After getting the present, Stella showed the guy to a chair, acting like the leader. She told him he could have a seat while the elf was busy making a pico drink. After a few minutes, the girl gave Sean his pico. He saw that it looked and smelled a lot like coffee. Shaw picked up the cup and sipped the pico. It tasted amazing, with just the right aroma and a rich, deep bitterness. Everything about it was perfect, yet he couldn't help but miss his own world. After trying pico, the guy got curious if it was easy to buy more. The drink was pretty simple to find, but it cost a bit more than he expected. You could also get it in the city, and Della promised to show him her favorite shop. Suddenly, the girl switched topics and asked who the guy really was. Shaw just stared at her, confused, not sure what she meant. Even though he was just a scientist's apprentice, the girl still didn't trust him. Stella could tell he was very well educated and had excellent manners, something only royals, nobles, or the children of wealthy merchants usually have on this continent. She couldn't think of any guy his age who matched what he looked like. Shaw was surprised that she seemed to know every person around her age. Della remembered them all because they were all valued customers. So the guy said he was from a country Stella had never heard of, but she still didn't trust him. His explanation didn't really convince her. The nervous man only said it was something about the sea. That's all he could explain. The girl didn't like how mysterious he was being. Still, Shaw believed there were things Stella was better off not knowing. That was just the way it was. He didn't want to share everything with her, so he warned her with a saying, "Sometimes being too curious can get you into trouble." Shaw knew that because he was Master Rubia's student, Stella was particularly curious about him. However, they weren't close enough to talk about personal things yet. Stella just frowned at what he said. Then the girl shared a proverb from her own country that was similar. She realized that sometimes, people really are happier when they don't know everything. Stella quickly switched the topic. The girl's eyes lit up as she noticed the lil merch berries. Curious, she asked where he found them, since those bright red berries were really hard to come by. Shaw said he found the berries while walking in the woods. The girl figured he must have seen some flowers there as well. The guy nodded in agreement. After taking a look at the berries, Stella placed them in her box. After a while, the man drew a flower on the board, and from it grew a bright red fruit. The flower had 5 white petals, and Shaw couldn't help but admire how beautiful it looked. Stella really liked the guy's drawing. The flower he painted looked just like the one described in the old stories. Shaw then suggested they check out the white flowers together. The guy knew his way around the forest, but he wasn't sure if the flowers would be in bloom when they arrived. Stella stared at the guy, her cheeks turning red from embarrassment. Shaw stared back, completely confused by her reaction. Stella almost laughed at how lost he looked, but managed to hold it in. She quickly figured out that Shaw didn't realize what he'd said, which made her certain he must be from somewhere far away. Shaw just stood there, totally clueless. It was nearly unbelievable that the show actually got to experience Lil Murch's flowers. The guy knew what was happening, but he soon lost confidence. Once things settled down, Stella told him that you can't just invite someone over just to look at flowers. Shaw didn't really get what she meant. But then the man suddenly realized what Stella meant, and his face turned bright red with embarrassment. Shaw remembered how Ruby looked puzzled when he said they'd stay together until the flowers bloomed, flowers that could appear anytime, or maybe never. Now the guy understood everything. He blushed deeply, feeling totally embarrassed. He finally got why Ruby was making that strange face. Stella had discovered that he was the one who told Ruby about it. Embarrassed, Shaw tried to explain himself, saying he didn't know what those words meant back then. Stella stood up, calmly removed her cape, and let it drop to the floor. The elf looked like he wanted to speak. Stella walked up to the guy, taking her time. The way he spoke to her made it clear that Shaw and Rubia weren't together. She softly touched his chin with her fingers, and Shaw glanced at her, looking a bit shy and unsure. The girl spoke in a flirty tone, saying maybe she'd give it a try with him. Stella gave the guy a captivating look, and Shaw was left speechless, just staring at her in surprise. But then the guy snapped back to reality. He couldn't figure out why Stella picked him. With her charm, she could have anyone she wanted. Smiling and taking his hand, Stella teased that she was bored of all the other men in the castle. The guy starts to freeze up whenever Stella the elf makes a move. Not wasting a second, the girl pushes him onto the sofa and makes him lie down, curious to see if he'll use any resistance or anti-magic powers. Suddenly, the door swings open. Rubia stood in the office doorway, her face serious and tense. The sorceress stared at everyone inside with a dark, unhappy expression. The young man nervously called out to the master, unsure what to do. Rubia walked over without a word. The guy and the girl were still awkwardly close on the couch. Without hesitation, Rubia marched up and pulled them apart, pushing them off the couch. An angry blonde grabbed the guy by his collar. She was surprised to find him in Stella's office, since she'd already told him to keep his distance. Still, because of the show, she had no other option. Suddenly, Stella walked up to the guy and pulled him into a hug. Shaw's cheeks turned bright red from surprise. The elf leaned in and spoke softly, her flirty tone making Shaw even more embarrassed. Still, Stella kept acting. She moved closer to the guy and noticed how round his ears were. Stella was curious and wanted to learn more about him, hoping he would fall for her. Just then, Rubia called out Stella's name. The sorceress frowned, wanting Stella to leave the show, but the elf refused to go. She was having too much fun and didn't want to quit. Stella told Rubia she couldn't stop because he had asked her to come see the white flowers. The sorceress was stunned and let out a loud scream. Shaw felt embarrassed and wanted to clear things up. Since Ruby already explained to him what inviting someone to see the flowers really meant, that's why he told Stella about it. Stella walked up to the shy guy again. She watched the light show and felt something different about him. She told her friends that Shaw wasn't like anyone else she knew. It felt to her like they were meant to be together. But Rubia suddenly cut Stella off and shouted at the elf. Both the elf and the man stared at her, confused by her outburst. Rubia was shaking with intense emotion. But then Rubia took a moment to think and, a bit flustered, told Stella that it was actually Shaw who first mentioned going to see the flowers together. She closed her eyes, feeling really embarrassed, as her cheeks turned bright red from admitting the truth. For a moment, everyone in the room went quiet. Shaw blushed as he looked at Rubia, clearly surprised by her confession. Suddenly, Stella burst out laughing. She found Rubia's honest words so funny that it made the witch from Far Lane turn red with embarrassment. Rubia's cheeks turned red, and she got upset by the girl's comment. Embarrassed, Rubia quickly insisted that she was only 24, so it didn't matter if she seemed a bit naive. She pointed out that at least she wasn't as old as Stella, who was already 450 years old. When Shaw found out Stella was 450 years old, he stared at her in awe. He couldn't believe she had lived that long. That's what it meant to be an elf. The man stared at the frozen elf in awe, amazed that anyone could live for centuries. Stella grew upset at his remark and mentioned something about memories. Stella was so upset that she tried to use magic to make the guy forget her real age. She aimed her spell at him during the show, but to her surprise, he managed to avoid it just in time. The guy watched nervously as the angry girl glared at him. As the dust from her attack settled, Stella appeared, her eyes dark and focused. She activated her magic again, determined not to miss this time. The boy's high-pitched screams reached all the way to Stella's office. Smoke leaked out from under the office door, showing signs of trouble inside. Hearing the loud noises, Princess Layla rushed over, eager to find out what was happening. Shaw immediately hurried toward her. The pale-faced young man warned Layla that it was too risky to go inside the office. Without saying a word, he gently picked the girl up, surprised by how light she was. Then, without looking back, Shaw hurried out of the office as Stella shouted angrily behind him. After some time, the young man managed to escape from Stella. Out of breath and exhausted from all the running, he stopped to rest against a wall. The princess realized the elves were truly wise, but she also knew that not everyone always acts with good sense. The girl smiled when she realized they had arrived at the tower's staircase. She excitedly told the guy that there was an amazing view waiting for them at the top. Princess Layla really wanted to share this special sight with him. Shaw also realized there were way too many steps in the tower, and he started complaining about how tall it was. He joked that he wished there was an elevator. That was actually the first time Princess Layla had ever heard the word elevator, so she immediately asked what it meant. The man told her that when they need to put a cabinet on top of the tower, they can use a rope to lift it up like a drawer, but someone will need to pull the rope. So they'll tie a weight that's just a bit heavier than the girl to the rope and lower it down from the top floor. Then, someone will pull the rope back up. Princess Layla was thrilled when she realized how the elevator worked. But first, they needed someone who could lift a kettlebell using the elevator. That was the only thing possible right now. The guy got it, since there was no electricity anywhere. Still, he thought it was not the best idea. In the end, when someone wins, someone else loses. If one person makes things better for themselves, it often means someone else has a harder time. Soon, Shaw and Leela reached the top of the tower. Shaw was amazed by the stunning view. Leela told him that she sometimes visits the tower when she feels down. Seeing the city below, glowing with fluorite lights, always lifts her spirits. The girl understood that she owed her place to her loyal followers and her people. The princess spoke while gazing thoughtfully into the distance. Shaw once told her that when you try to make things too simple, someone always ends up paying the price. The same goes for rulers. If leaders oversimplify things, it can actually make life tougher for everyone else. Even though the girl was only 15, she had already learned a lot about how the world works. Princess Layla called out to Shaw. She had a lot of faith in him. With someone as talented as Shaw, their festival was sure to be a hit. Excited, she told him that together, they could help their country grow. Shaw realized that his experience from the old world could help this country grow, but he worried that people here might see too much interest in technology as dangerous or even forbidden. But if visitors from other countries come, he might find hints that will help him get back home. Princess Layla and Shaw admired the stunning scenery together. Shaw called out to the princess to get her attention. He excitedly told her that they would do everything possible to help, and he promised that their new invention would bring great wealth to the country. Farain was a tiny town, but it was important enough to be its own state. Shaw had been stuck in the castle for more than 2 weeks, and he was really starting to lose his patience. Shaw lay awkwardly on the floor, his stomach growling with hunger. He desperately craved Japanese food and felt so sad he almost wanted to cry. All he could think about was having miso soup and onigiri again. After some time, the man stepped outside and found himself in the castle's marketplace. There were lots of stalls around him, each selling all kinds of goods. The man went to the market hoping to find rice and miso, but he couldn't find anything like them. The only thing available was barley, but barley is nothing like rice. Shaw also noticed there were many different types of fish products available. It looks like people here have perfected drying and transporting fish, except for local varieties that spoil quickly because traveling takes too long. Another key ingredient in Japanese cooking is soy sauce. To make it, the chef needed to get his hands on some glutamate. Soon the guy arrived at a seafood stand. The seller noticed him searching and offered to help. Shaw explained he was looking for dried seagrass, which surprised the seller. The seller searched through his goods, and after some time he pulled out some seagrass. Still, he wasn't completely sure if it was the right item. After all, the seagrass looked white and moldy. The seller told Shaw he was planning to toss it out because nobody wanted to buy it. Shaw was surprised, though, because it wasn't really mold. In fact, the white appearance meant the seagrass was top quality and even tastier. So the man quickly told the seller he wanted to buy them. He also picked up some dried fish and asked if he could get some seagrass as a free gift. The seller happily agreed and gave him all the groceries. After some time, the man came back carrying a big bag full of groceries. He was smiling because his shopping trip was a success. When he finally brought the heavy bag home, he started unpacking everything. He bought things like cereals, vegetables, and a bunch of other food items. To kick things off, I decided to make a seaweed soup called kelp broth, using a recipe from my culture. He remembered he needed to chop the seaweed into small pieces and then pour hot water over it. Then just sprinkle a bit of salt on top, and your soup is ready in no time. Excited to try it, the guy took a spoonful and tasted the soup he made himself. It was fantastic. The man loved the rich smell and delicious taste of the soup. It was real kelp, just like he remembered from his own world. Tasting the soup from his own world made Shaw think of his mother. He realized she was probably worried about him not being there. The guy wasn't sure if his world was still there. Maybe he was the only one who fainted from the shock when the light disappeared. These thoughts made him feel sad, so he tried to distract himself by experimenting with food again. Shaw thought of taking the water wheel from the workshop to help out. He figured, why not use it to build a barley mill? Sure, he could use just a mortar and pestle for what he needed, but that was tough and tiring work. So Shaw decided to make things easier by building a simple machine instead. A man built a water wheel to power a machine that could peel barley. With this invention, a large mortar started working on its own, easily removing the husks from the barley. Thanks to his clever idea, he quickly ended up with clean, ready-to-use grains. After Shaw got the peeled barley, he cooked it right away. When he tried it, the food smelled a bit unusual, but it actually tasted great. The only problem was that it was too dry to use for making tortillas. The next day, Shaw was excited to try something new. He was about to make miso for the first time in this new world. Rubia gave the excited guy a wary look. She could tell he was planning something unusual again. Shaw was eager to impress his teacher by showing off a groundbreaking new idea. Miso is usually made from soybeans. The man found some beans, but they didn't quite look like the soybeans he was used to seeing back home. You'll also need some salt for this recipe. Finding it is usually no problem. The dish also calls for rice malt, but since the guy doesn't have any rice, he'll use barley malt instead. This will make the dish taste more like barley miso. Making miso used to take a really long time, but in this world, magic makes everything easier. So cooking this dish is simple now. The guy was excited to get started, and even if it didn't turn out right, he knew he could just try again. First, the man soaked the barley in water, and then used a special trick to heat it up. The microwave oven was magical. The man also used it to heat up his tools to over 100 degrees. Keeping everything clean was super important. If any germs got in, the whole thing would stop working right away. After all the steps, the steamed barley is split into small parts. Then, the guy uses his magic to help the barley grow faster. Suddenly, something starts to show up on the barley. Ruby thinks it looks like mold. The girl tells the guy they can't eat this food if it's really mold. But Shaw comforted her. He told her that the yellow stain on the barley wasn't ordinary mold. It was actually sesame mold. The miso sold in Japan usually has white mold, but in this world, the mold had changed color. That amount should be just right for this batch. Koji will be ready soon. After a bit, the sorceress noticed a sweet, inviting smell coming from the grains. Once the wonderful smell filled the air, the beans were steamed again and mashed in a special microwave oven. After that, Shaw and Rubia carefully mixed in some salt and barley malt by hand. After that, they shaped the mixture into small balls. Ruby shot the guy a doubtful look. She still wasn't convinced the food would be edible, but he promised her that if it fermented properly, it would actually taste delicious. Next, they put everything into a clean, sterilized jar, then closed it tightly with a lid. Shaw used magic to make the fermentation go faster. The whole process took about an hour, with a few breaks here and there. One man sat awkwardly on the floor, while Rubia enjoyed her tea without any worries. Everyone was eager to see how the food would turn out. Thanks to his magic, the man made the cooking go from taking nearly a year to just 1 hour. After the hour passed, the dish was finished. Shaw opened the jar and enjoyed the delicious smell of freshly cooked miso. The miso from another world was finally ready to eat. The guy gazed at the dish with excitement and pride. Ruby still wasn't sure about him, since she had never heard of miso before. Far from them in the castle courtyard, a maid with cat ears named Nimue was busy sweeping. As she worked, a delicious smell drifted through the air, and Nimue grew curious about where it was coming from. The tasty aroma was coming from Shaw's house. The guy showed the girl the meal he made. It was miso soup with pork. She hadn't heard of that kind of soup before, so he told her it's a recipe from his hometown. He explained that he made the broth using kelp and dried fish. The miso soup had vegetables like potatoes, onions, and carrots. He couldn't find anything like radishes, though. Besides the soup, he made some barley rice. Shaw also grilled some meat. He cooked all of this to go along with the miso soup. Soon, the man brought out all the dishes and placed them on the table. Warm, delicious steam filled the air. Shaw added bamboo chopsticks next to the food, making it feel like a real Japanese meal. The guy started eating the meal he cooked, tears in his eyes. With each bite, he tasted something familiar and truly Japanese. He invited Rubia to try some too, but she was a bit nervous about eating something new. Suddenly, there was a knock on Shaw's door and someone called out his name. It was the new maid, curious about what they were cooking because the delicious smell of food had caught her attention. Then the man invited the maid to taste the meal he had cooked. As she walked up to the table, she was completely stunned. Nemu looked uneasy when she saw the strange food in front of her. She guessed the guy had cooked something with bug eggs, since barley reminded her of them. The miso soup also made her nervous because its cloudy broth looked a bit like muddy water. Shaw told the girl he wouldn't give her food like that and explained it was only pork soup. Suddenly, Stella walked in, and Elf called out Shaw's name. Along with Stella, Princess Layla walked into the room. The guy said hello to both of them. Stella felt really hungry, and she and the princess enjoyed the delicious smell of food in the air. The guy wasn't concerned about unexpected visitors. He had cooked plenty of food, certain that the delicious smell would attract everyone. He wasn't sure if they'd enjoy it, but he still offered them all a taste. But soon after tasting the food, Nisamu's face lit up with happiness. She started eating quickly because it was so delicious. Seeing how much Nisamu enjoyed it, Rubia also wanted to give it a try. When Rubia tried the soup, she was surprised by how good it tasted. Stella was confused. How could something that looked so plain be so tasty? Princess Layla was just as amazed. Then Princess Layla noticed there were carrots in the soup. She usually hated carrots because she thought they tasted too bitter. But when she tried these carrots, she was surprised to find they were actually sweet and delicious. The man told everyone that the flavor was different because of something called alkali removal. He also mentioned that Kamado ashes help take away the bitterness. This was the first time the girls had ever heard about these special ashes, and they were amazed by what he could do. After the guy explained how to remove bitterness, he handed Numi a regular carrot as an example. The maid tasted it and immediately noticed it was unpleasantly bitter. After the demonstration, Shaw put the carrots in water and sprinkled some lye on them. Using a bit of magic, he quickly sped up the reaction between the lye and the carrots. Numi picked up a carrot that had been soaking in water. When she tasted it, she was delighted to find it sweet and not bitter at all. She was amazed by the change and wondered if it was magic. But the man disagreed with her. He told her he was only using magic to make things go faster. Without magic, they could just leave the carrots and lie to soak overnight. Stella was a bit surprised. She had no idea about removing alkali. Then, the elf stood up and thanked the guy for the tasty meal. Now that Stella wasn't hungry anymore, she started craving something else. The elf moved towards the guy super fast, making him blush with surprise and embarrassment. Numi watched them closely, her curiosity growing. She felt excited, her cat ears twitching with anticipation. If Stella could put on a show, Numi figured she could too. With a burst of energy, Nimue leaped onto the guy. Shaw ended up getting pushed onto the bed, with Stella and Nemu both landing right on top of him. Elf told me she's been having this kind of threesome for a while now, and honestly, things get a lot more interesting when a beastman is part of it. But nothing changed. Rubia stood there, gripping her magic staff, staring at the boy with a stern face. Suddenly, as he tried to escape from the girls in a panic, someone grabbed his hand. It was Princess Layla. She walked up to the man and gave him a warm hug. Smiling playfully, she asked if he had any dessert after dinner. Shaw was caught off guard and blushed, too shy to reply right away. Suddenly, the guy snapped out of it and realized he had no idea what the girl was talking about. Princess Leela got upset and explained she was referring to a black, sweet treat. That's when Shaw understood she meant chocolate. But unfortunately, he was all out of chocolate. Princess Layla would always remember how good chocolate tasted. Sweet desserts made her so happy. A young man called out to her, curious to see if she could find the sugar. The girl was upset by his question because sugar was valuable. If she took some for herself, others might think she was wasteful. Princess Layla didn't want to seem selfish like the rich nobles. Angry, she pushed him aside and told him she had important duties. Soon, her sad cry could be heard. The princess faked her sadness and started to cry. She thought that if all the new stuff had been sold, none of this would have happened. Stella and Numi blamed the guy for making the princess upset. Rubia just watched quietly. Shaw didn't understand what was going on and felt lost. Suddenly, Princess Layla stopped crying. She looked at the man and told him to think of a solution. Shaw just needed to listen to her and do what she asked. The girl grinned confidently, reminding the guy of his bold promise to fix this problem. Now Shaw had no way out. He'd given his word, and once you promise something in front of royalty, you can't take it back. After some time, everyone left. It was evening, and the guy was sitting alone at home. Shaw was still confused about the chocolate issue. He wasn't sure what to do, but the guy thought maybe he could use syrup instead of chocolate. Malt sugar comes from barley and was once used to make drinks. When barley starts to sprout, it creates an enzyme that changes starch into sugar. But even if the show tries to trick us by using syrup instead of real chocolate, it won't work for long. Princess Layla will soon start asking for real chocolate again. There was no cocoa in this world, and Shaw had never even heard of it here. That's why he looked worried. He didn't know if anything else could replace cocoa. Suddenly, the man had a thought. He remembered reading that in South America, people sometimes fry big spiders and eat them. Supposedly, they taste a bit like chocolate and are considered a special treat there, so they must actually taste pretty good. Then Shaw remembered getting stung by a spider near a waterfall. He almost didn't make it, so he felt worried that someone might use a spider against him. After some time, the young man walked into his master's office and called out to Rubia. She was focused on reading a magic scroll. He asked her about the spider and whether it stayed close to the waterfall. Rubia confirmed that the spider does live near the waterfall. This spider hunts animals that gather by the water, which is why you often see spiders near lakes and ponds. Shaw understood what the girl said. Ruby glanced at the man with suspicion, curious about what he was planning now. Shaw smiled and told his teacher he wanted to eat the spider. Farain, the sorceress, stared at him in disbelief. She asked him if he was serious, but Shaw repeated that he wanted to eat the spider. The girl went pale and quickly put her hand over her mouth. Shocked, she stayed quiet for a few seconds before nervously asking the guy if he even knew what kind of spider it was. Shaw stared at the girl, confused, but she stayed silent about what was on her mind. Still, she convinced him to go ahead and eat the spider. Before he did, she warned him that the spider's venom was in its head and chest. So the man ventured deep into the forest, determined to find the bold spider that dared to attack him. Right now, Shaw was excitedly searching for a spider. He was once the main hero who got taken down by a slime at the very start of a role-playing game. But now, everything was different. Magic was real. Feeling sure of himself, he wandered around, casually searching for a spider just for fun. All of a sudden, he heard a rustling sound coming from the bushes. Suddenly, a massive spider appeared in front of the guy, looking just like the one he saw by the waterfall. But this one was so gigantic, it actually seemed more like a giant crab than a spider. Shaw looked tired as he watched the spider crawl out. The spider that bit him before was much smaller than this one. Destroying him is simple, just use a little magic to heat him up. The guy remembered something about crabs. When they die, they start to smell really bad, which the show didn't want. This spider looked a lot like a crab. People even had an urban legend about it. So instead of trying to warm the spider up, the guy thought it would be easier to just freeze it. Using magic, Shaw quickly beat the spider. Normally, this would have been tough, but Shaw froze the spider so much it couldn't even move. Shaw laughed as he picked up the frozen spider and put it in a bag. A little later, he headed back home. While he was in the forest, Shaw managed to catch 3 big spiders. He took them out of his bag and tied up their legs with rope so they couldn't move. Then, using his magic, he warmed them up. As the spider shell was heated, its color shifted from brown to purple. Seeing this didn't make the guy hungry, but he thought it was now safe to eat the spider. Shaw then took the spider apart piece by piece. He placed the venomous parts in a separate bowl. The spider's venom was known to cause paralysis, so Shaw began to wonder if it could be used as an anesthetic. The black-haired guy carefully took out the poisonous parts of the spider and started to eat. When he broke open the spider's legs, he saw meat inside, kind of like king crab. Shaw doubted there was any poison left in the meat, but he still eyed it cautiously. But the guy pushed aside his hesitation and took a bite of the meat. To his surprise, it tasted amazing, better than crab meat. Now Shaw really wanted some crab fried rice. The guy relaxed. He hadn't gone through all this just to get something that tasted like crab meat. Shaw tried some of the fluid from the spider's belly. It was bitter, kind of like coffee. After some time, the man returned to his boss's office and told Rubia that the chocolate was done. He then presented a bowl filled with candies, which looked even more delicious than the chocolate from Coco. She was horrified to see that he had been created from a spider, her eyes growing wide with shock. The boy, completely unaware, was about to eat some chocolate, but the girl shouted for him to stop. She could not bear to watch him eat that chocolate. Shaw frowned when the girl screamed. He was looking at her, not happy with her reaction. For Rubia, this chocolate shouldn't be gross just because it's made from a spider. She was a real scientist, and scientists need to test everything themselves. Rubia felt embarrassed by what he said. She didn't really want to eat the chocolate, but she brought it to her lips and took a bite. In just a moment, her face lit up with happiness. The chocolate was amazing. This chocolate tasted even better than before. Rubia was curious about how the man made it. Shaw said he began with a special liquid from a spider's belly. When he explained this, a sorceress shouted in surprise. Shaw then combined the liquid with malt syrup and warmed it up to release more flavor. Since the mix wasn't rich enough, he added some milk fat to make it thicker and creamier. Using fresh ingredients, plus plenty of cream and butter, this chocolate tastes even better than anything you can buy at the store. Suddenly, the guy realized Rubia wasn't paying attention to his story. She was too focused on enjoying the delicious chocolate. As the man left the boss's office, he told her he wasn't sure the product was completely safe yet, so she shouldn't eat too much chocolate. Shaw wanted to meet the princess to let her know how the chocolate was coming along. Soon the guy entered the throne room and told Layla he had made some chocolate. The princess was impressed and said she wanted to see a show about it. Nate Chocolate was the one delivering the chocolate to the princess. The princess asked about the ingredients since Shaw mentioned they were rare. Shaw said he had found a substitute. Then, he pulled out a spider. Layla almost fainted from shock, but the maids rushed in just in time and kept her from falling. The guy finally learned the spider's name. The princess, annoyed, demanded to know why the spider was purple. Back then, it wasn't unusual for medicines to be made from animal or even mythical creature parts. The princess was unsure, but just as Rumenes arrived to arrest you, a brave maid offered to try the chocolate first. Rumenes loved the sweet, rich flavor and couldn't stop eating it. Seeing this, Layla smiled with excitement and wanted to taste it herself. But suddenly, something was wrong with Rumenes. She went pale and quickly covered her mouth with her hand. Everyone felt a wave of fear as the mood in the maze suddenly shifted. The guy quickly helped pick up the scattered Rumenes. Everyone seemed worried about the maid. Rumenes leaned closer to the guy with a flirty look and told him to just call her Rumi. Shaw, a bit embarrassed, gazed at her in amazement. The girl blushed and took deep breaths. She called out to Sean in a soft, tempting voice, bowing her head. The guy quickly understood what was happening. He hurried out of the throne room and rushed to his master, leaving the girls behind. The young man hoped that if there really was poison in the chocolate, Magister Rubio could use magic to cure himself. Soon, the guy entered the girl's office, calling out for her with worry in his voice. But it was too late. She was already lying on the floor. She was out of breath, just like Rumenesis. The girl gave the guy a passionate look. Because of the chocolate effect, her whole body blushed in a tempting way. Seeing the sorceress made Shaw's nose start to bleed. The girl, still catching her breath, couldn't believe he had made her eat it. Suddenly, her scream echoed through the entire castle as she called him a fool. Soon after, the man realized he was back in the throne room. The chocolate he made turned out to be amazingly powerful. Its effects were so strong that even the master wouldn't be able to resist him. The mark on his cheek was proof of that. Princess Layla was thrilled and wanted to start making lots of this chocolate right away. The guy was surprised by her reaction. He thought it might be risky. But because of how powerful chocolate is, lots of people would be willing to spend a lot of money on it, especially if there's no way to reverse its effects. The princess knew this for sure. After spending some time in the artisan's workshop, Russell actually enjoyed trying the cooked spider. Ever since he was a kid, this man has always noticed spiders. He never realized he was missing out on such a tasty meal for so many years. The man complimented the guy for thinking of using the spider as food, saying it was a brilliant idea, especially now that they know how to make chocolate. He added that they should get ready to start making it on a large scale. The man told the guy that he felt like they were at a major crossroads right now, and things were about to change. It really was an important moment. It was like a ladder just popped up out of nowhere in the middle of a big empty field, but the man had no idea if climbing it would take him somewhere amazing or somewhere terrible. The craftsman smiled at the man's compliment. He truly believed that the heart of the world could be found in Farthakling. Their invention was truly one of a kind, and no one else had created anything like it. Shaw felt proud that people recognized its value. Still, they had to overcome a lot of challenges along the way. Russell didn't really get what the guy meant by difficulties. Shaw explained that their main problem was finding fuel. They needed it to build and share their invention across the world, but all they had was firewood and coal. Good coal for making iron was hard to find. As more people move to the city, it's likely that fuel will soon become scarce. There's plenty of firewood in the Farain forests if you cut down the trees, but that's not really the answer to the problem. If we cut down the forest, it could take hundreds of years for it to grow back the way it was. Cutting down trees might also turn the land into a desert. That's why, in the world of the show, some cities ended up buried under the sand. Also, he knew the forest was much smaller now than when Princess Layla was little. The trees were cut down to use as fuel, not to keep warm in winter since the weather there doesn't get very cold. The trees in the forest gave people everything they needed: wood for daily cooking, firewood to heat the bathhouse, and charcoal to use as fuel for their ovens. As the city grows, more people will move in. This means that the demand for firewood and charcoal will also rise quickly. It would be great if coal or oil was available in this world, but people don't even know what those things are. The craftsman knew that cutting trees could be harmful, but thought it was just another forest. Shaw, however, didn't see it that way. The fertile lands, fresh water, rainfall, and good climate all exist because of forests. Forests act like massive natural reservoirs, storing water for us to use. If you focus too much on making quick money, you could end up hurting your whole country. The men were surprised when Shaw said this. The guy with black hair started to think seriously about what might happen in the future. After some time, Shaw reached the top of the tower. He enjoyed the beautiful view that Farain usually admired. Standing there, feeling calm and relaxed, Shaw pulled his phone from his jacket pocket. The guy wanted to snap a photo of the stunning view on Farain, but just as he lifted his phone, he realized it was out of battery. But the man started thinking about coal, oil, and electricity because he needed energy. Suddenly, he got a bright idea. He wondered if he could use magic to solve the problem. The show needed power after all. The next day arrived. The guy was so happy, he clapped his hands with excitement. A new idea popped into his head, and he couldn't wait to test it out. With a big smile, he eagerly tried his magic, because he was the kind of person who just had to act when inspiration struck. Right now, Shaw was using a magic spell to drain the water from the stream beside the workshop. The stream was man-made, created by a windmill. At first, he planned to plant a garden there, but he realized this could lower the air pressure. In an area filled with water vapor, he planned to use a spell to lower the pressure. As his magic worked, the air began to shift and swirl. Soon, dark clouds filled the sky and lightning flashed. At first, the guy was excited, but then he realized things were getting out of hand and stopped the magic. Shaw had let himself get too involved, and it could have turned dangerous. After some time, the man pushed an iron rod into the ground. He realized he should have been more cautious. Back in the house, Shaw used magic once more, and suddenly dark clouds and lightning filled the sky. The lightning moved straight toward the metal rod. Shaw was able to call down lightning with a mix of magic and skill. He discovered that by creating a big column of clouds, he could build up a strong charge in just about a minute. His magic only worked within 100 meters, so he couldn't reach farther than that. Shaw walked over to where the impact happened. As he got closer, he noticed a strange, sharp smell of ozone in the air. He started to worry it might be dangerous. If the water current is strong enough, the show might be able to use it. By shaping a narrow passage like the letter T and letting a powerful current flow through, it could definitely work. As the man was building a T-shaped pillar, Ruminus walked up to him. Shaw then saw the girl standing in his doorway. The maid told him that Nemo got frightened by the thunder, so she came to see if everything was all right. The man understood it was his fault. He told her he had been trying out some magic tricks. Then the man and the woman stepped outside. This was going to be his final experiment. Ruminese felt uneasy about what he was doing. Shaw explained his plan. He wanted lightning to hit the iron bars and melt them. After explaining, Shaw cast the thunderbolt spell. Even though his magic didn't need any words, he noticed a beautiful girl watching him. As someone who loved to show off in the past, Shaw couldn't resist and decided to impress her with a powerful lightning strike. Suddenly, Rumides screamed in fear and covered her ears, completely shocked by what was happening. The guy walked up to the metal bars and realized his plan was working. If he could control lightning, he could melt anything he wanted. Suddenly, there was a loud noise like hail, and an upset Layla told the guy to stop making lightning inside the castle. Shaw could have ruined everything. She made it clear that lightning experiments were not allowed in the castle. Shaw felt down because he couldn't try out a quick magic trick. Maybe that's why the master chose to live alone in the forest. This guy wanted to try some new experiments, so he needed to get ready first. Shaw created a special plate with a hole that gets smaller step by step. The man placed a copper rod, shaped and flattened in a forge, into a plate. Because copper is soft and easy to stretch, he could make the wire thinner by pulling it through a hole again and again. Shaw couldn't believe someone could make such a thin, twisted wire by hand, but it was just what he needed. Normally, the wire needs to be heated to make it softer, but he used magic instead. The main challenge was making sure the wire's coating protected it from short circuits. But vinyl didn't exist in this world, so he used paper covered with a mix of nakava and oil instead. Shaw heard that using paper wrapping is supposed to be better than vinyl, but wasn't sure if that's actually true. He wrapped thin leather around the metal rod, then added a copper wire on top. Now he had a working reel. The difference in how many times it turned might have mattered, but it was still just a test. The next day, the guy saw Numi while he was walking. She was hiding behind a pillar, looking frightened. She nervously asked him about the thunder. Shaw assured the girl that everything was okay. Since the princess didn't let him do experiments in the castle, he decided to work in the forest instead. Numi understood his decision. She quietly told him that even though Shaw was nice, the girl was still a bit scared of him. The guy pointed out that the maid didn't just look after the princess, she protected her too. The girl agreed with him. But then the guy asked what she would do if lightning suddenly struck, and Numi needed to warn everyone about bandits attacking with lightning magic. If the girl gets scared and runs away, she could lose her job. Numi felt sad about this because she didn't want it to happen. But the girl still wasn't sure what to do. Shaw suggested she come watch some experiments with lightning magic. He said it would help her feel more comfortable. Numi hesitantly agreed to his idea. They needed to look for a big open space, hopefully near a river. Nim shouted at the show's leader from behind because she was struggling to keep up. The man claimed he could run so fast because he used magic, casting a special spell on himself to make his body lighter. Nim was the only one who could run that fast without using any magic. The beastmen were truly incredible. They also had to attach the coil to a wooden pole, then pull one end of the copper wire upward while pushing the other end into the ground to slow it down. Shaw quickly told the girl to keep her head down. Unlike regular magic that you can aim and control, this kind of magic copies natural events, making it unpredictable. Honestly, you never really know where it will strike. If they're not careful, the magic could strike them, so they have to stay back. Suddenly, bright magical lightning appeared, and the guys shouted excitedly that it was starting. The lightning hit the prepared coil directly, and Nim let out a loud, sharp alarm. Shaw cheered with excitement because their plan had finally worked, and it looked like lightning had hit exactly where they wanted it to. Their homemade coil suddenly burst into flames, and the group quickly noticed it. Nim shouted in fear that their coil was burning and tried to get the attention of the show's host to make sure he saw what was happening. The master quickly rushed over, knowing how risky the situation was. If a fire started here, it would be a total catastrophe. There were no tools or ways to stop fires in this world, so if one broke out, the entire kingdom could be destroyed. Shaw noticed the fire starting to creep through the bushes. He paused, thinking about using some cooling magic, but quickly realized it wouldn't be strong enough. He searched for a better way to stop the flames. Suddenly, he had an idea. What if he could block out the oxygen by creating a vacuum? The coil managed to catch fire, and smoke started pouring out. Shaw let out a breath and joked that they nearly set the whole forest ablaze. Nim admitted that she was still scared of thunder, looking a bit down. but the master smiled gently and told her not to worry, she'd get used to it in no time. Even after the fire was out, the guy still wasn't sure if their experiment had worked. Shaw pulled out his sword and looked closely at the metal wrapped around the coil, comparing it to his blade. Then, he took the metal from the coil and attached it to his sword. The master cheered with excitement when he realized his experiment had worked. The coil had turned into a magnet, and it was now sticking strongly to the steel part of the sword. But this magnet wasn't very strong. It actually looked like a collection of about 100 small magnets, and it lost its magnetism really fast. The man realized that steel couldn't hold its magnetism forever, which he found disappointing. Shaw took a moment to think, and then he figured out how to make magnets. Nim stood behind him, hoping everything would turn out well. Deep down, she felt like all their efforts might have been pointless. The master turned around and laughed, saying everything was okay. He explained that every failure brings them one step closer to success. Even though the magnets didn't work, Shaw noticed that using a bit of magic together with other things can actually do a lot. He saw this as a win. Sure, it's not quite as impressive as spoken magic, but you shouldn't underestimate magic, especially when you're just starting out. The girl told the guy that since they had burned everything, they could finally go back to the castle for lunch. They walked side by side toward the castle, happy that they'd get to eat soon. Before they knew it, they reached the row of shops and strolled between them. The woman gave the item to Pico, and he thanked her with a smile. In this world, compasses are pretty basic, and he knew there was a special stone needed to make them work. However, finding that stone wouldn't be easy, even with the Queen's resources. If Shaw gets some cobalt or neodymium, he can build a really strong magnet. The problem is, he doesn't know where to look for these metals, or how to process them if he finds any. Luckily, there are also iron and platinum alloys that could work. Shaw once looked this up online in his previous world. He learned that, before neodymium magnets were created, platinum alloys were used as strong magnets in premium audio equipment. The guy was thinking about platinum and also remembered that gold, silver, and copper exist in their world. Shaw had never heard of platinum before, and Ed didn't even know it existed. Hopefully, he'll learn about it someday. If he has magnets and coils, he can build a motor, and with that motor, he can make a generator. By hooking something up to the generator, he can already do arc welding. This method is different from welding with lightning. He's excited about it because controlled welding will let him do more things and work with more materials. Shaw has really been looking forward to this. Suddenly, loud screams came from the alley. Someone was shouting, asking others to stay away from him. Shaw was confused by all the noise, and at first, he thought it might just be a fight. 3 men stood in the alley with a girl, shouting at her and warning her that she was done for. The girl looked upset and reached for her sword. She was interesting. She had 2 hair tails and wore gloves. Shaw understood right away that she was the Queen's bodyguard. 3 men began insulting the girl, and Shaw, who was watching, couldn't understand why they would act that way toward her. One of the bullies claimed that if she had just stayed silent, no one would have gotten hurt. Shaw suspected this was actually Mizuki, or maybe the princess's bodyguard, but either way, the guy seemed unsure how to handle the situation. The man in the raincoat muttered insults at the girl, hoping she would just go away, even calling her a royal servant. The girl stayed quiet, gripping her sword's handle tightly. But just a few weeks ago, something interesting happened. The Queen spoke to Mizuki and brought her into the spotlight, calling her the inventor of the new carriages. Mizuki introduced herself to the curious guy, and then talked about how she felt riding in her own creation. The girl said it was amazing. Usually, traveling by carriage makes her really tired, but this one is so comfortable that she could easily fall asleep inside. Mizuki believed everyone would want to own one. However, Shaw pointed out a downside. The carriage tends to bounce when it goes over uneven roads. He wants to build wheels with a softer material, but he hasn't found the right one yet. What he really dreams of is creating a carriage that moves on its own, without a horse at all. The Queen was shocked to hear about his plan for a horseless carriage. The Queen started laughing and said, "Now that's true skill." She added that if someone could really make something like this, they could sell it and even make good money from it. Shaw nodded a bit awkwardly in agreement. Mizuki stopped for a moment and looked at the Queen and the host, noticing how well they got along. The Queen laughed and said she was correct, since he was her top expert. Shaw reached out to Ms. Mizuki since they both had official matters to discuss, and he thought she might want to share her thoughts about the trip. She agreed to talk with them. They walked together down a long hallway. The guy noticed that the girl was from the famous K-Mode Empire. She quickly agreed and started sharing her story. The mighty K-Mode Empire is a major power found east of the distant Far Strip. If the Far Strip marks the west, then it's clear the empire lies in the east. Shaw wasn't sure why he had left his country. Mizuki felt confused and tried to find the right words to explain it to her. The man soon realized he had acted wrongly and apologized for being rude, since they had only just met. Mizuki told him to relax, since they've met before. She explained that she had traveled with Her Highness on a visit to Rubia. Shaw was really shocked to hear this. He felt really awkward, and his cheeks turned red as he glanced at Mrs. Mizuki. He hoped she wouldn't mind if he took a closer look at the sword she wore on her belt. After all, being in such a strange situation made him extra curious. Zuki said he could take a look, but it wasn't anything special like a legendary sword or something sacred. Now Shaw watched in shock, as the two swords seemed to battle each other all on their own. The girl was clearly stronger than the man trying to attack her, who looked like he was about to collapse. The guy nearby just stood there, staring in shock, his mouth wide open. But he was still thinking of a way to help her. No matter how skilled Mizuki was with a sword, she couldn't take on 3 opponents at once. Suddenly, her sword moved with incredible speed, flashing through the air. The girl opened her mouth in shock. She might have been hurt because drops of blood started to fall onto the street's stone tiles. Shaw couldn't take it any longer. He called out the girl's name and warned her that someone was about to attack her from behind. A ball suddenly appeared in the guy's hand and started spinning fast, shooting out a bright light. The light was so strong it blinded 3 men nearby, and they quickly shielded their eyes, trying to hide from the brightness. Shaw stood there, clearly upset, with a strange bright light glowing from him. Mizuki finally noticed him, but so did the other men, and they suddenly recalled that Shaw was actually a scientist. The bearded man yelled for his group to run. Shaw and Mizuki stayed quiet, just watching as the men headed off in the other direction. The guy was sweating nervously. He had fooled them with his air compression magic, but it was obvious he couldn't hold his own in a real fight. After thinking for a bit, he snapped back to reality and quickly sat next to Mrs. Mizuka to check if she was okay. The girl hurt her shoulder and grabbed him to help stop the bleeding. Shaw shouted that she was hurt and bleeding. He knew he had to help her right away. They leaned against the wall while Shaw wrapped her wound and used a small stick to help secure the bandage. He managed to give her some basic first aid. The man quickly picked up Mizuki and yelled that they had to hurry back to the castle, since the master would surely know some healing magic to help. Now they've arrived at the master's house. Mizuki is lying on the bed, feeling sick, but the doctor won't help her. Shaw was confused and started pleading with Stella, since the master had gone out to gather plants and she was the only person he could turn to. Did Trudy help? The girl snapped back, saying she wasn't a doctor here. The guy wasn't sure how to convince Stella, so he asked her for help. He explained that if they didn't do something for Mizuki, she might be gone for good. Shaw was nearly in tears as he begged her. Stella stayed silent for a moment, then calmly gave her terms. If Shaw agreed to stay the night with her, she'd think about his request. The man agreed and promised to do whatever was asked, but Stella realized he probably thought she'd be happy just because he gave in. She knew her own pride wouldn't let her settle for something so insincere. Shaw quickly apologized, clearly ready for whatever came next. Stella just laughed and walked over to Mizuki, who was hurt. Sitting beside her, Stella quietly began a healing spell to help Mizuki recover. Mizuki's wound quickly healed, disappearing as if it was never there. When she woke up, she apologized to Lady Stella for causing any trouble. She explained that the bleeding had stopped, but warned that moving around could make it start again. As Stella walked away, she said she didn't really care what happened to the people in the Empire. Mizuki got upset and tried to talk to her, but Shaw just couldn't figure out why this girl disliked them so much, or if there was even a real reason behind it. Shaw hoped she would be all right. The girl smiled, thanked him, and said he had saved her life. The guy said he hadn't really done anything. He just always wanted to help if she ever needed him. Mizuki was quiet for a moment, then told him he was a really kind person. Shaw peeled an apple and realized this was the first time he'd ever seen Stella use her healing magic. As soon as she started casting the spell, the wound healed instantly. The man was so deep in thought that he didn't notice he was peeling an apple until he accidentally cut his finger. Surprised by the pain, he wondered if his magic could help heal the cut. Shaw put his finger with the tiny cut in his mouth and wondered again. Our bodies are full of chemical reactions. Why couldn't they use the same magic people use to help plants grow, or something similar, to speed up healing or trigger reactions inside us? Monsters don't attack very often, but in every world, it's people who are the hardest to bring back. And especially since anyone could attack out of nowhere, Shaw really wants to learn some basic attack and healing magic so he can protect himself. The man pulled his finger from his mouth, brought the knife closer, and carefully traced it over his wound once more. Suddenly, drops of blood started falling onto his table, right where he had just been carefully peeling apples. From the outside, he might look a little crazy, maybe even obsessed with real science. But the truth is, he's using a special kind of magic that helps things grow, and he's planning to speed up skin growth to heal the wound. The guy glanced at his finger and started to feel frustrated, noticing that the wound was getting worse and bleeding even more than before. He tried using magic to speed up the body's healing, thinking that if skin repairs itself through chemical reactions, then magic could make it happen faster. But once again, it didn't work. So things turned out to be more complicated than he expected. Then he used double activation magic, making both growth and healing work together. The wound slowly started to get better. But using magic twice at once needs a lot of focus. It's kind of like talking to several people at the same time while still keeping track of every conversation. No matter how hard he tried, the blood kept coming from the wound, which started to really annoy him. He tried using magic again, but pushing himself so much made sweat appear on his face. And finally, his wound was fully healed, with only a little scar and a tiny spot of blood left from what used to be a big injury. Shaw shouted with excitement, saying he had done it. He leaned back in his chair and let out a big sigh, realizing he'd been so caught up in his thoughts that he almost forgot to breathe, but eventually he did. Shaw can only use the power of his mind, but if he keeps learning and discovering new things, his magical skills will grow even stronger. If you think about it, casting spells is kind of like running a program. They activate different effects and can be combined in clever ways, but he still didn't get when it stops being something that can recharge itself. For example, if you use magic on a piece of meat, it won't turn back into a cow, it won't multiply, it won't make other things grow, and it won't spoil. Magic can't actually heal wounds completely. It just speeds up the body's natural healing by borrowing some energy from the future. Shaw ensured the flesh couldn't heal itself, since there was no life energy left to draw from. At the same time, he was examining it while it was still freshly cooked. This means that when the heart stops, blood and oxygen can't reach the cells, and as soon as their energy runs out, the cells can't come back to life. Animals can't regrow parts very well, but plants are tough. Even if you chop plants into tiny pieces, they often start growing again. Think about vegetables left in the fridge. Sometimes they start to sprout all on their own. After finishing his steak, the man suddenly realized something interesting. Some plants are actually cloned to keep their quality consistent. Suddenly, he sprang up from his chair, pressed his hands on the table, and hurried into his greenhouse to check on his flowers. One flower stood out to him. It was a vanilla orchid. Shaw got some young plants from an expert and grew them until they produced vanilla beans. He also learned that orchids are often cloned and started to wonder if, by encouraging extra tissue growth in a special way, he might be able to clone them himself. The guy understood he had to give it a shot. He picked up a leaf and started cutting it into tiny pieces. First, cut the leaf and put it into a clean dish filled with water. Then, use magic to help the leaf cells start multiplying. Make sure each leaf piece is spaced evenly in the water. After a while, the leaf might grow so much that it turns into a soft, white mass. New sprouts started growing from the leaf, and soon, a big new leaf popped out of them. The guy cheered happily, saying he had come back to life. This way, he could easily clone and grow all the valuable plants he wanted, and have as many vanilla beans as he could ever need. Then, just like a classic villain, he burst out laughing. He kept laughing so hard that he eventually fainted and fell to the ground. It looked like he had used too much magic and pushed himself too far. After some time, he found himself back at home, focused on something small. Suddenly, someone spoke to him. It was her. He glanced over, surprised to see her there. The girl noticed he was up to something impressive again. Shaw caught her looking and joked that he was just lost in silly thoughts. He wondered what was going on and hoped that maybe something good had just happened. Nim asked Mr. Shaw again because she wanted him to visit Onion Koppen, but he was still confused and didn't understand what kind of place Koppen was. The girl said it was a soft, cheerful place that smelled really nice. Sean and Nim walked down a quiet street in their town. Hardly anyone else was there. So the guy turned to her, curious about what she meant. She was talking about something soft and a place that smelled really good. Nim mentioned that her mom had started a shop. The guy seemed a bit surprised and wanted to know more, so he asked her about it again. They arrived at a house, and Nim pointed out that this was the place, Cognan Kapon, the Beast's snack bar. The doorbell rang loudly, letting everyone know that new visitors had just walked in. The diner was already busy, with lots of customers chatting and enjoying their drinks. Nim mentioned that all the visitors were beastmen and hoped it wouldn't cause any problems since Shaw wasn't one of them. The girl then looked at Mr. Shaw and told him that everyone was happy to meet him. Nim's mother, Ninny, greeted him warmly and said she was truly happy to see him because she had heard so much about his genius as a scientist. She also mentioned that she was his mother. The young man introduced himself as Shaw and explained he was still a student of the master since he hadn't earned his certificate yet. The guy learned that you need to join the Imperial University to get a real master's certificate. He isn't too interested, though, because he believes having the certificate won't change how he does things. People in the diner suddenly saw someone who looked just like the guy sitting next to them, almost like his real self had shown up. He heard the surprised reactions around him, but he didn't understand why everyone was so amused and interested in him. Ninny gave me a plate of food and smiled, saying it was their special dish, homemade meatball soup. The man quickly took a spoonful, smiled, and said it tasted amazing, especially the broth. The girl explained that the broth is made by cooking the fish right in the pot without taking it out. She also adds spices to remove any fishy smell, which makes the meat taste richer and more flavorful. Nim shared with her mom how the chef on the show was making soup just for them. The guy realized this meant the recipe was changed to suit animal tastes. Nim laughed and told him the soup was actually really delicious. Someone tapped the guy on the shoulder, making him turn to look at Mr. Shaw. Suddenly, a group of cat girls appeared around him. The guy was totally confused and had no idea what was happening. Shaw believed they were the same species as him. One girl agreed, while the other said she wanted to get to know the show's leader better. Shaw started to wonder if they were interested in the scientists, but he felt like that wasn't really true. The blonde cat girl mentioned that people in the city are saying the master of the show might actually be a demon. The guy was confused and didn't understand how those rumors started. Then the girls added that he is actually the one who created the famous spider chocolate. Shaw thought back to the spider chocolate. After that one incident, people started making it and selling it to us in secret, saying it was a healthy tonic and a good supplement for recovery after sickness. But the merchant quietly hinted at some other benefits. For example, one merchant claimed that in reality, it works for something else entirely, and with it, all the girls will be drawn to you. Somehow, despite the tacky ad, people seem to love the product and are leaving excited reviews. The cat girl mentioned that Nim said the show's host is actually a nice person. The master of the show also came up with a pump, which she now uses every day, making her tasks much easier. The guy said he was happy to hear that because he used to work for his boss, and pumping water from a well was really hard work. The girl kept repeating it, but she still doesn't know why water is coming out of the pump. Another person agreed, saying it was strange. So the girl looked at the showmaster, curious to see what surprising thing he would do next. Then Nim joined in and said that the show's boss was secretly planning to build a wagon that could move without any horses. The girls were confused about how a carriage could move without a horse. They joked that maybe she was riding on magic. The guy said no, it's not magic, it's just simple logic. The girl looked a bit surprised, but he quickly explained it to her. He wanted to show an example, so he made a toy and held it up for everyone to see. The cat girls were curious, but they didn't really know what it was, so the host asked him to show them how it works. This toy car has a big, bouncy wheel that stores energy when you push it. Once you let go, the car uses that energy to keep rolling on its own. This machine stores energy in your hands, but instead of hands, it uses an engine. And instead of having 4 wheels like a regular car, this one only has 2. I was curious to see how it would work. Then he set it on the floor and watched it go. He released his hand, saying, "This is how it works." His invention rolled smoothly across the floor, instantly grabbing the girls' attention. The cat girls quickly ran to the typewriter, catching the guy off guard. They started tearing up the room and diving under the tables, all because they thought they were chasing a car. Shaw talked to the girls to help them relax. Then Ninny stepped into the hallway, confused about what was happening. The cat sat there for a moment, looking a bit uncomfortable, and explained that sometimes their bodies move without them really meaning to. Ninny replied that this is why things don't go the way they want. Shaw was confused and didn't get what she meant. She explained that they couldn't do their job properly if they were always jumping on people. If they're supposed to be focused, but something like a rat surprises them and distracts them, they might get hurt. Shaw suddenly remembered and mentioned that, actually, Nim didn't attack him, she just wagged her tail a little. Ninny said her training made all the difference, and she felt really proud of her. Later, as they walked together through the market, Shaw thought he might pick up some spices too. They stopped at a stall, and Shaw commented on the unique selection in the shop. The shopkeeper turned to greet them. I believed he was an expert, and I wanted to be certain. He also mentioned that he owns some rare ores. Then he gave him a stone and told him that even though it seemed like an ordinary rock, there was more to it than Shaw believed. But that's not true. If you hold it too close to the knife, the ore will quickly stick to the blade. Shaw noticed this and realized the ore must be a natural magnet. He became curious, since such magnets are so rare that even one is worth more than gold. Then he suddenly said he was going to buy it. The merchant was surprised how quickly he made his choice and asked him to wait, not believing he was serious about buying it. Shaw thought maybe she wasn't actually for sale because he wanted to purchase her. The merchant apologized, saying he never expected anyone would actually spend that much money on it. He also mentioned that he'd like to buy something else as well. Out of all the strange things for sale, there was some dried slime that caught the guy's eye. He pointed at it, and the sign next to it said these were rare treats from distant lands. Nim was a bit shocked by what he picked, but the guy had already decided and was paying for it. The team had already visited the show's workshop. Nim wanted to talk to the master because she had bought many things here, and the guy opening her bag seemed surprised by how much she got. He suddenly remembered a dish he wanted to try making, so once everything was set, he offered to cook. The girl smiled and gladly said yes. The table was covered with parts that looked like gears, but when the man turned around, he saw Nim already fast asleep on the bed, so he quietly kept working. And finally, the man shouted that everything was set. He grabbed a hand mixer, ready to get started. It works just like a toy car. You turn the handle to store up energy in the spinning flywheel. Thanks to inertia, the flywheel keeps the whisk moving even after you let go. Nim woke up feeling confused about where she was and what was happening. Shaw saw that she was awake and started to explain. He was mixing egg whites to make something called meringue. Nim had never heard the word before and had no idea what meringue was. The girl couldn't believe how quickly it turned soft and fluffy. It was white, light, and tasted amazing. The guy then suggested they try making something fluffy together too. There was some cream on the table, separated from milk using a centrifuge, and you can easily whip it with a hand mixer. The girl looked at the show's host, confused about the strange slime. She didn't understand why it was there, since everyone knows this kind of slime is actually poisonous. The man explained that only the organs are dangerous, but the clear part isn't poisonous. She looked exactly like a jellyfish. If you put it in hot water and let it cool down, it will become firm again, just like a jelly that sets. If you mix meringue from the leftover slime with whipped cream, some syrup, and a bit of vanilla bean, you'll get a semi-frozen dessert that looks almost like a NATO emblem. They wanted to add this for extra flavor and to make the treat even more appealing. Pour the mixture into a bowl and let it cool. And just like that, your unique NATO-inspired slime mousse appetizer is ready to enjoy. Suddenly, Stella and Rubia walked in through the door. The healer smiled and asked Shaw if he could bring her something sweet to eat. The man quickly told them it was nearly done and they could take it soon. He seemed to think they believed this place was just a regular coffee shop. The three girls quickly tried the new food. They had no idea what it was. It tasted great, cool, delicious, with a soft, fluffy center and a crisp outer layer. Shaw explained it's called a mousse cake, but when it came to naming the main ingredient, he paused and didn't say anything. Then he revealed that the secret ingredient was actually mucus. The girls were really surprised to hear this strange fact about the recipe, and they started to wonder if they were even talking about the same kind of slime. Sadly, the guy admitted that he had never met her in real life. Stella explained that she tried it because people say it's a special treat, but she didn't find it very tasty. Shaw replied he was happy they appreciated her effort. Rubio was frozen in shock and couldn't move. Stella thought this meant something was wrong. The girl looked like she wasn't breathing, but she was still holding her spoon with mousse in it. Stella mentioned that Rubia can be a bit picky about food and has some strong opinions on it. Shaw laughed and agreed, saying that's completely true. Whenever she comes across a rare fish, vegetable, or dish, the first thing she wonders is whether it's something she can eat. But Shaw thinks they should take a lesson from the Japanese, who aren't afraid to try all kinds of foods. Stella couldn't figure out what the smell was at first because it didn't look like slime at all. Then she realized it was a vanilla bean, but the guy told her it was actually the scent of orchids. The girl suddenly remembered she uses it as incense. Shaw quickly looked at Mrs. Stella and joked that she should turn him into perfume. Mrs. Stella was taken aback and asked him what he meant. He suggested mixing the perfume with a special kind of alcohol and pouring it into a small bottle so they could enjoy the nice scent anytime they liked. Stella quickly threw her arms around his neck, trying to kiss him, but just then Rubia woke up and looked at Shaw. This caught him off guard, but he was happy to see that she was okay. At first, she denied everything, but then said she would forgive him if he made her a special perfume. The next day, loud shouting echoed from the workshop for everyone to hear. Someone even called him awful. The man quickly understood that she meant Stella's perfume, which he had heard she really liked. The queen agreed, but Shaw quickly added that he had also arranged for the queen to have her own. The girl tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, hoping he liked its scent. When he smiled and told her she smelled nice, calling her Your Highness, she felt happy and a little shy. She told him to call her Leela. The guy felt awkward and said he couldn't just use her first name. Realizing people were watching, she puffed out her cheeks, showing she was either shy or a bit annoyed. Shaw could relate to her feelings, since he often felt distant too, especially when others called him master or true master. so when they're alone together, he decides to just call her Leela. He wanted to be certain it would work. Layla quickly said it was fine and she agreed. Then, Shaw suddenly remembered something and looked at Layla. She didn't know what it was. He asked about the chocolates, wanting to find out if people were buying them. The girl replied that yes, they're very popular. In the market, each spider chocolate bar costs 2 gold coins, and there are rumors that wealthy merchants, royals, and nobles are buying them up super fast, as if they can't get enough. Even though people don't mention it, some have actually disappeared after eating too many of these chocolates. The man repeated this awkwardly, feeling unsure if it was really as safe as Leela claimed. All the old men and greedy people he wanted gone were already out of his life. And maybe that's what he was hoping for all along. Shaw nodded shyly. He hadn't realized things would turn out this way. Leela called him amazing, ran over to hug him, and laughed with joy. He thought she seemed like a good person, but she clearly wasn't scared to do bad things, and her political moves were on a whole different level. Shaw couldn't help but feel nervous, his forehead starting to sweat. The show has spent several months in a completely different world, and he has picked up a few new things. People here have lived the same way for over 1,000 years. Let's imagine that this world's civilization is about as advanced as Japan was during the Edo period. Still, it's possible that in just a little over 100 years, they could catch up and reach the modern level of Japan today. One reason could be magic. Since people can solve problems easily with magic, there's less need to invent new things. That's why they don't even have simple things like matches to start a fire, or more advanced stuff like electricity. Some special magic stones can catch fire when you give them magic energy and hit them. But these stones are really expensive, so it's hard for normal people who can't use magic to even light a simple candle. Shaw wondered if he could build a basic generator using a natural magnet he recently bought from a traveling merchant. Unfortunately, it's not strong enough to charge his phone. However, in his world, it would be enough to power a light bulb. But the man began to think about how to make a light bulb. He knew he needed glass, and there was some available. However, this glass wasn't clear enough because it contained too many impurities. So he understood that he would have to find a way to improve the glass himself. Shaw started looking for the perfect materials. Glass is mainly made from quartz, which is easy to find along riverbanks. Glass like the kind we used to have will be hard to make again, because it needs special chemicals that might not be easy to find. He believes that some antique crystal glasses were actually made using wood ash. Shaw learned that adding more lead makes glass more transparent. He wondered if a heavy detector scintillator could simply be made from lead glass. If so, he thought, he could find lead at the materials department in the castle. Inside his house, you could hear the noise of work going on. Shaw was back at the table, busy building something new. There was a crucible on the table, used for melting glass, which he had made by shaping a big chunk of quartz himself. Now he needed ashes, so he would have to burn a lot of firewood. He planned to melt them into a large pot filled with magically heated water, stirring until everything dissolved. First, we need to pour a liquid on top, then use magic to speed up the reaction. In the end, we'll get a white powder, which will be potassium. But what a mess! The name isn't important right now. What matters is that we need to crush the quartz to help it dissolve faster. He also swapped out his old pestle and mortar for metal grinders, so now wheat can be crushed automatically by the power of the water wheel. While experimenting, he found out that by using magic to heat and cool quartz again and again, he could break it into tiny pieces. He realized once more that magic has huge potential, especially if used creatively. It can even make work much more efficient. Place quartz shells and lead together in a crucible, then put the crucible into the oven to heat them. Lead would melt quickly, but quartz is different. It barely melts at all because glass needs an extremely high temperature. As expected, a standard blacksmith's furnace just isn't hot enough for this job. To make it hotter, he used magic to boost the heat. By speeding up how fast the molecules move, the temperature can rise even more. The quartz starts to melt and shines with a warm orange glow. Once it's fully melted, it is poured onto a steel plate. You have to squash and stretch it using magic that makes things heavier. That's the tricky part about using magic to lose weight. After that, it started to cool. Suddenly, something puzzled him. He noticed some lead was still there. Shaw realized he hadn't melted all of it. After trying a few times, he finally understands. Only the lead that turned yellow from the heat has melted properly, so he needs to heat just the first section. Only the parts that have turned yellow will be chosen. The show tried making another test batch. He started pouring the liquid out of the glass. The guy took a moment to think about what just happened, and then a smile appeared on his face. He finally made it, and now he has a perfectly clear glass. There are a few small flaws, and it's not perfectly smooth, but it's still good. He realized it could work for making window glass or even basic dishes. Usually glass cools down and hardens fast, so you have to work quickly to shape it, but with a bit of magic, he can keep it warm long enough to get the perfect shape. Glass is such a useful material, and having a special oven for working with it sounds exciting. It's fun to try something creative and unique. Suddenly, he remembered he needed to make a light bulb. Now he's ready to give glass blowing a try. To blow glass, a mix of iron and bamboo sticks coated with castor oil is used. He put the glass mixture into the hot oven, twisted the bamboo stick, and gently blew air into the middle of the tube. He spent a few days working on making glass. The light bulb he was trying to create wasn't finished yet and started to melt. Shaw noticed how tricky the process was. He kept trying to figure out the right way to blow air into the glass, thinking it was all about getting the right balance and technique. The man blew into the glass tube again, trying to shape a light bulb. By now, the sun had already set. He spent the next few days working on glass. Stella and Rubia watched, still unsure what he was making. Stella glanced at her reflection and felt surprised. It was like an elf was staring back at her. Ruby watched the scene, puzzled by the strange boards she saw. She also spotted some glasses in the corner and realized they looked like hidden shields. Shaw turned the corner and spotted Master and Mistress Stella. He quickly started telling them how he had made the glass even better. He also told her that it was a glass mirror, so people could see their own reflection. Stella was amazed and could hardly believe that the image was really her. Shaw greeted them and said they had arrived at the perfect moment, as he wanted to talk to them about something important. The man held out a coil of wire and was about to say it was copper, but Rubia figured it out on her own. The man agreed and decided to use a thin film instead. Earlier, he had tried wrapping it with paper, but that made it too bulky. Rubia considered using Nakawa because it's easy to remove. Just bend it a bit and it comes right off. Then Stella suggested that using insect wax could actually work better. Shaw asked again, but Rubia realized that it was probably the right thing to do. Then she told Shaw to get ready because they were heading into the woods to follow him. The guy was surprised. They weren't supposed to go right now. But the man understood, since the master was a true scientist too. Ruby told them they needed to move quickly. Insect wax here is just like it was back in his old world. When he dipped the copper wire into the melted wax, it coated the wire perfectly. Thanks to the master and Mrs. Stella, he got great results. The main issue was the thread. He couldn't find any tungsten, which was commonly used back then. Instead, he made the carbon filament by steaming thin strips of bamboo. The very first incandescent lamps, also known as Edison bulbs, used bamboo as the material for their filament. Stella believed the vacuum was doing something magical. The man agreed, but the woman was curious and asked him what he was actually doing. The guy explained it was actually a lamp. The girls were surprised. He pointed to the copper wire around it and called it a coil. He said if you move a natural magnet in and out of the coil, the lamp lights up. He brought a magnet close to the coil, and the lamp lit up immediately, just as he had explained. Rubio was amazed to see it really glowing, while Stella was still puzzled about how it all worked. The man explained that placing a magnet inside a coil makes a special force, kind of like electrical magic, and that's how the lamp lights up. Rubia understood that it wasn't really magic after all. The man agreed and said this idea is something anyone can try. If you add a water wheel or windmill and set up a system to keep it running, you could make the lamps shine even brighter all the time. But Stella pointed out that there was a problem. It feels strange when darkness suddenly turns to daylight. Shaw, feeling embarrassed, turned to Mrs. Stella and politely asked her not to make things awkward for him. As he tried to deal with the persistent girl, he accidentally knocked the magnets off the board. A strange stone shaped like a pentagon landed on a tablet next to a lamp. Shaw was shocked by what he saw. The light bulb was glowing, even though there was no magnet on the coil. He discovered that when you bring the magic stone close to the spiral, the light bulb lights up. This meant the magic stone had electromagnetic induction. Shaw was fascinated by this and really enjoyed exploring the wonders of that other world. Rubia was amazed by how beautiful the light from the bulb looked. Stella wondered if the energy that powered it was the same as an electric shock. Shaw had heard stories that magic stones could store and release magical energy. However, he never imagined that the magic stone had the power to produce electricity. The magnet has to keep moving inside the coil to work, but with a magic stone, just having it nearby creates a magnetic field. Shaw asked the expert if magic stones get weaker when used a lot. The girl replied that she had never heard of that happening. He was amazed to find out it was true, because this type of energy caused no pollution and could never run out. If he had found something like this in his own world, he would have won the Nobel Prize by now. Shaw had already arrived at the castle and was chatting with Layla about a new invention he was working on. The queen was happy to have him in her kingdom and was eager to find out what he had created this time. But the man was serious. he turned to the girl and said, "Your Highness, this could actually be sold." Now they were walking through the basement, and Layla had no idea what they were supposed to do there. Shaw told her to hold it tightly. The girl gripped the strange object, still unsure what it was. Shaw explained that they were about to place the magic stone down. The girl was holding something that looked like a lantern, lighting up part of the basement. She thought it was really cool and wondered if it was magic. Shaw denied everything and claimed it was just a clever logical trick. Insert a shiny copper plate with a tin reflector at the end of a bamboo tube. Place a coil inside and connect it to a light bulb. If you put a special stone in the tube, electricity is instantly generated. The girl shined the light on her face and said she loved it because she wouldn't have to struggle with lighting a candle anymore. Shaw joked that it would also be useful if Layla needed to use the bathroom during the night. The queen quickly announced that the product would be sold, and they should start making lots of them right away. The young man said he was ready to help, but there was something he needed first. The girl waited eagerly to hear what he would ask for. He has to use special glass and a bit of magic to make this glowing piece. Making the glass takes a lot of energy. He's working on a way to produce more at once, but it might take some time. The girl smiled brightly and said she'd let him decide. Shaw walked through the city when a woman smiled at him and called out, "Hello, Mr. Scientist." Shaw replied with a cheerful, "It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" While he was out shopping, a man noticed he was a master. The man asked if it was true, and when he confirmed, the man told him that the latest and best swords could be found here. The man looked at his sword and explained that he made it for himself, using bits of metal he bought earlier. He said he was a skilled craftsman, but admitted he couldn't do everything alone. After all, only dwarves can create swords as impressive as this one. The merchant told him he'd be happy if he dropped by once in a while. Shaw laughed and promised he'd return. He also said he was enjoying the beautiful weather. The man was stretching as he walked quietly down the street. He passed a few alleys, and everything seemed normal at first, but soon he started to feel uneasy, like something strange was following him. He had no idea what was happening, but he could tell someone was nearby. Suddenly, it hit him. He was being followed. He really hoped it wasn't the gang coming back for revenge after what happened last time. Now he felt lost and didn't know what to do next. Shaw noticed he was being followed by the same men who went after Mizuki. He figured he might have an advantage, since he knew a few classic ways to shake off someone tailing him. Maybe this time, he wouldn't be so easy to catch. The man took off running as quickly as possible, vanishing around the corner. He wanted to see if the stalker would finally reveal himself. Suddenly, a young girl accidentally tripped over his legs and fell hard on her back. Shaw was surprised to see that she was just a child. They looked at each other in silence, both a bit shocked. Suddenly, tears filled the girl's eyes and she started crying loudly. The guy, worried that people were staring at him, quickly tried to calm her down and insisted that he wasn't the one who made her upset. Shaw nervously checked his pockets until he found a piece of candy, which he gave to the girl, promising her a sweet treat. The girl said Maria told her you shouldn't take things from strangers. He thought that if something like this happened where he lived, he'd call the police right away. Shaw thought she didn't recognize him, since he was a top scientist from the castle, but the girl said she did and called him the star of the show. The man let out a sigh of relief, happy that she truly knew who he was. If she knows this man, then he's not a stranger. He always shares candy with his friends. The girl thought for a moment, her eyes lit up, and she took the candy. She thought it tasted amazing, and the man told her he made the candy himself using fresh fruit. She's playing it safe by not accepting anything from anyone. After all, she doesn't want to risk getting kidnapped or sold. Maria warned her about this, so she's being extra careful. Suddenly, someone behind her thought she was hiding something. A boy told her she shouldn't accept things from strangers. The girl quickly said that this was the host of the show, a true master, and she knew him, so she could get things from him. Someone in the crowd shouted that it wasn't fair. The boy with cat ears called him an old man and said he knew exactly who he was. He told him he might trick his sister, but not him. Shaw just found this funny and adorable. Since she works at the castle, Shaw was surprised to see beastmen working there too. Suddenly, he realized they were talking about him and that he was her brother. So, Brother Nim asked her not to treat him like a cat. He wanted to let me know that she bragged about having a cute brother, but he insisted I shouldn't call him cute. After all, he's going to be the man of the family one day, and when he grows up, he'll work hard, earn good money, and take care of his mom and sister. Shaw started to cry in the shower because he felt so happy, and he knew something good was coming his way. The other kids quickly said they help Maria every day. The man smiled and said, "That's great, I'll give one to each of you." He wondered if they were playing a game, trying to see how close they could sneak up on others. And it was a good thing that he was the one there. Imagine if it had been his master, or even their elf. He asked the children if they had ever heard of his master. All the children answered together, saying, "She is a witch." Then I quickly asked about the elf, and once again they all replied at the same time, "She is a destroyer." The guy was sure he was talking about her. This elf is trouble, and you can never guess what's on her mind. One of the boys said he knew that if a real master saw the show, they could turn it into something magical. The girl said she could even become a real monster. Shaw laughed and said, "You know what they say, there's no smoke without fire. Maybe something actually happened, but if they keep messing around like this, their parents are going to get really upset." The children sat on the stone edge, staring at each other in shock. It turns out they don't have a mom or a dad. Shaw was a bit surprised, though he'd heard rumors about a shelter being in this place. Maria lived there with around 20 children. Shaw wasn't a fan of the risky games the kids played, but he offered to show them something safer and more fun. The children were curious and excited to hear what he had in mind. Shaw sat down with a piece of wood and started carving. Soon he made a little wooden helicopter. He didn't stop there. He also made toys for the kids, like stilts to walk on. Shaw even made them a slingshot and played with them, always finding ways to match their interests. Shaw believed that all children are precious, no matter where they come from. He made his living doing something fascinating, real academic research. He thought maybe he could help by donating to a shelter for these kids. When he first arrived in this world, he had nothing. Earning 3 gold coins a month, plus extra rewards for each new invention, he's saved up around 100 gold coins so far. As it started to get dark, Shaw told the kids it was getting late and they needed to head out. He said he could walk them to the shelter if they could show him the way, and the children quickly agreed. As the 2-story house came into view, the kids shouted excitedly that they were home. They looked to Sister Maria, eager to let her know. Without even turning to face them, Maria told them she was glad they were back. The girl went to fetch some water, but then she saw a man standing with her children. He smiled, greeted Maria, and explained that he had met her kids earlier in the city. Suddenly, the girl let go of the rope from the well. She hugged Shaw tightly, started crying, and called him Mr. Zero. The guy couldn't believe what the girl did. He thought he was worth something, not just a nobody. The kids went to Sister Maria and told her this was all just an act and that he was actually really wise. The girl looked at him quietly, her cheeks turning red as she realized she had mistaken him for someone else. She quickly said sorry, but Shaw smiled and told her not to worry. It was no big deal. He wanted to be certain that she really was Maria, so he asked her, and she nodded, still a bit shy. Suddenly, another girl hurried over to Maria and excitedly told her that Mr. Shaw had made lots of new toys for them. The girl told him she knew he was looking after the kids. Still, she worried she couldn't do anything to thank him, but she asked him to visit more often. Shaw was already at the big table, saying sorry for finishing the food. Maria told him the kids were excited to have him there, and she asked everyone to link arms. Then, out of nowhere, Maria said, "Itadakimasu." The children all echoed their mentor's words together. Shaw couldn't tell what they were saying or what it meant. Maria said that itadakimasu is a tradition from another country where people thank others for their food, and she learned about it from Zero. The guy stayed quiet and asked them to wait because he thought that maybe Zero was just like him, Japanese. The girl then looked over at Mr. Shaw. She felt bad for making assumptions too quickly. The girl wasn't sure if he really mattered or not. Shaw was puzzled, thinking there was something about him that seemed familiar. But Maria disagreed, saying he was actually much braver than anyone realized. Maria noticed he looks different now, but his vibe is the same. Zero told them that next time, he'll look different again. Shaw still couldn't figure out what kind of person Zero really is. The girl said he saved her life when she nearly died from lung disease, specifically tuberculosis. He also cured her eye that had been blind since birth. Shaw had no idea something like this could happen, but he was still confused about who this Zero actually was. He started asking around about the girl to see if she was a real magician, since she seemed very talented. Shaw also asked me to share anything I knew about her. The girl quickly agreed and explained that it happened when she was 12. Maria was born blind, and her family rejected her. She was sent to work at the Imperial Night Sky Pavilion. She caught the illness from a visitor. That's how she became sick. After being thrown out of the Night Sky Pavilion, she wandered the streets, slowly realizing that she was fading away. One day, she was sitting alone in the darkness next to a big tree. That's when I knew this was where her journey would end, right at the moment she was about to take her final breath. A shadowy figure stood before her, and she heard a voice from behind asking if she wanted to stay alive. Believing it might be God, the girl replied with hope, as though she was touched by a shining light. She accepted his offer, and when she woke up, her cough was completely gone. As her eyesight returned, Shaw felt like she was seeing a miracle. The girl agreed, but she had one request. She explained that Master Zero believes there's no real God in this world. If someone thinks there is, it's probably just a creature with knowledge and technology far beyond our understanding, or maybe even a trickster pretending to be something greater. The man said he agreed, but he was curious about what would happen next. Zero suggested she live with one of the teachers at the orphanage. Life with Master Zero and the other kids was good. They shared lots of joyful moments together. One day, Master Zero told her he had to leave and go back to a faraway country. As she chased after him crying, Master Zero gently said Maria would handle their connection. If their bond was real, she would see him again one day. Shaw was surprised, but Maria went on to explain that Zero believed it was a sign of destiny or a deep soul connection. The guy realized that Zero was probably Japanese. Also, Blaha knew that someone else had entered this world, not just him. She held on to the hope that one day she would see Master Zero again, and promised herself to treasure their connection when that moment finally came. The girl said the teacher had died 2 years ago, but she hoped that now he could still share his wisdom with the children. Shaw didn't say anything at first, but then he looked at Maria and told her he wasn't called Zero. Still, he promised to do his best. The guys began installing a water pipe that brought fresh water straight into the house. He handed out water pistols to the children, but gave Maria a brand new flashlight instead. The girls at the table were amazed. Shaw gave the girl the coins, and she gratefully thanked him with tears in her eyes. She was so touched by his kindness that she didn't know how to express her thanks. He found a carpenter using Rassel's recommendation to fix the problem. He was surprised when he got 80 gold coins for the job, but to the hero, staying safe matters most. Suddenly, someone bumped into Shaw, making him lose his balance and fall down. The guy leaned in close, looking at his own chest and checking it out. His muscles were actually bigger than the master's. The girl commented that he was being naughty. The man asked for a moment to explain, but the woman was confused and couldn't tell what he was looking at. He noticed the shiny silver hair, long ears, and dark skin. Shaw wondered if this could really be a dark elf. Still, she started insulting him again. The girl didn't like that he kept looking at her. Just then, the show started. She was confused when he quickly apologized and left. She felt irritated and told him she was in a rush. The next day, Shaw walked into the diner and greeted Ninny. She smiled and said she was happy to see him. Suddenly, someone told Shaw that a person was looking for him. This really surprised Shaw. The elf he was running from stood by the table, giving him an annoyed look. He started to say something about what happened yesterday, but the girl cut him off. She quickly apologized. The guy was completely stunned. She came here hoping to meet the legendary master called the demon. But the more she learned, the more she understood that the person she chased away was actually him. Since he often eats at this place, she decided to stay and wait for him. Shaw felt embarrassed and quickly apologized for staring at her, explaining that it's just a natural reaction for men. The girl smiled and said she was already used to it. Then she introduced herself as Fei Fei and once again called him a true master. Suddenly, the girl grabbed the guy's arm. She wanted his help, hoping he could save her village. The guy was completely confused and had no idea what was happening. He learned that massive landslides had blocked both sides of the road in the valley, cutting off the path to Fei Fei's Dark Elf village. The Dark Elves village is located at the far end of the western gorge on the Felon's side. Luckily, they got a ride in a merchant's wagon traveling west. Shaw believed that Dark Elves had the power to use magic. The girl agreed, but explained that even with magic, they couldn't handle something as big as that boulder. The guy couldn't believe he was actually that tall, and he wasn't even sure if it was true. He thought maybe he should ask a magician who really knows about powerful magic. Fifi said it would be too expensive, and their village doesn't have a lot of money. But real masters are different. They work not just for money, but for a bigger purpose or a meaningful idea. The guy just laughed and said it's normal. It happens to everyone. He admitted he can't really say no, especially if a pretty girl asks him for something. In that moment, he realized what being a man truly means. He told the girl she could just call him Shaw, and if he thought of a better name, he'd let her know. She agreed, and they kept riding in the noisy cart. The guy was trying to figure out what was making that loud sound. The cart driver looked at the real master and said they were in danger. Demons had surrounded them, and glowing eyes were already watching from the bushes, ready to strike. Faye noticed they were black wolves and realized they must have wandered into the wolves' territory. Shaw was unsure what to do, but the girl said they could create a distraction. The wolves started coming out from the bushes, showing their sharp teeth. The elf looked at Shaw and suggested they could escape by climbing a tree. The man used his light weight to his advantage and grabbed a tree branch, quickly climbing up above her. Soon, the wolves started jumping and trying to reach them in the tree. Shaw complained there were just too many of them. The girl looked worried because she didn't have her bow. It was still getting fixed. The guy got anxious, thinking they might be trapped, and stood up. Faye reminded him about magic. She could use fire magic, but she really didn't want to. Black wolf skins are very valuable, so it doesn't make sense to destroy them, but Shaw explained that this wasn't his main point. Lightning magic can burn through layers of skin, and the blast can even knock people off their feet. The girl nodded in excitement, saying she understood. She realized that if lightning hit this tree, it could cause a huge problem, so he needed to find a solution. Finally, he came up with a solution. The spirit's blessing would keep everything around them safe. His lightning magic can change the weather by lowering air pressure, drying up water, and making storm clouds appear. The girl was impressed, and the boy showed off his powers by creating a mini weather display. There wasn't any water around, but the forest still held a lot of hidden moisture. Soon, the sky was covered with clouds and flashes of lightning showed up. Before long, a bolt of lightning suddenly struck right towards them. The guys jumped down and quickly ran away from the tree. All the wolves were already lying still, and Faye felt pleased to see that. The man waited patiently in the carriage for two people to arrive. The girl looked at the merchant and asked how much he would pay her for them. But the merchant wanted to be certain they truly wanted it, because they had earned it. The girl replied that she already had enough money. Shaw said if you look at it like that, it makes sense. He always dreamed of facing the black wolf. The girl explained that this was the moment. She was talking about the show, and about the big boulder that blocked the way to her village. When he saw the enormous boulder, he couldn't believe his eyes. He had no idea how it got there or what it really was. The rock was so massive, the people standing nearby looked like tiny insects. Everyone was glad to see Fei return. Right away, she told the others that she had brought a real expert with her. The people were happy and cheered, believing they were finally safe, but he was still confused, unsure how he could destroy it now. The dark elf village is hidden at the far end of a deep valley, created long ago when a massive cliff split the land from east to west across the continent. However, there's a massive rock, around 30 meters tall, that broke off from the cliff and is now blocking the valley. Because of this, vans and other vehicles can't get through. The man used some magic, and suddenly there was a loud explosion. Shaw tried to duck for cover, but when the smoke settled, a black hole was left where the magic had been. The power of compressed air just burned the top layer. In the past, something like this would have exploded like dynamite. He needs much more heat to get the result he wants. When air is squeezed into a smaller space, it gets hotter because the molecules move faster and create more heat. If you compress the air even more, the temperature will rise even higher, and any release of pressure would be much stronger. He had tried using different kinds of magic all at once before, and though it was tough, he could do it. But this was his first time trying to use the exact same spell 2 times in a row. When you use 2 different types of magic at the same time, it's like gripping a baseball bat with both hands. You have balance and control. But if you try to double up on the same magic, it's more like stacking one bat on top of another. It just doesn't work as smoothly. The man wants to try something risky, so everyone should step back and give him space while he focuses. The center turns bright white. If that's really happening, the temperature has to be above 5,000 degrees. The man tested his technique on the stone, and it actually started to melt. He chose to keep drilling even deeper. Suddenly, his eyes widened in shock because black liquid started to ooze out of the stone. The hot, liquid rock suddenly burst out, and Shaw got scared because it was so near. He realized this happened just because he let his guard down for a moment. He escaped because he drilled a straight hole, which made the pressure go up. Faye was really worried about his safety. She began calling his name, relieved when Shaw finally opened his eyes. The girl just wanted to make sure he was okay. The guy apologized for not having any magic left, trying his best. The girl understood that dealing with those huge rocks was going to be a big challenge for them. If they don't knock it down, they can at least make a path for the wagons to get through. Shaw believes his magic can help clear the way, but his magic is special. They can only use it twice a day, so it might take a while. The girl cheerfully said that it was no big deal compared to how much time they usually spend practicing their own skills. Shaw did his best to clear the path. He managed to break the stone, but it didn't break apart all the way. If you place the double compression shell sideways, lava and explosions can burst out right away, which is really dangerous. So always move it straight first, then tilt it slightly down and back. Repeat by moving it straight, then a little down and back each time to stay safe. Shaw mentioned that this is really exhausting, and if Fayette wanted, the master could take a break and get some rest. Now Shaw was lying across the girl's lap, his face turning red with embarrassment. He was surprised by how much they valued him. It almost made him uneasy. But the girl explained that it wasn't really about him. They just wanted to help someone they thought was useful. But the other elves complained a bit, saying they had never been treated this nicely before. Faye stuck her head out of the tent and told them to be quiet, but they still had to pick up all the trash. The guy couldn't help but think these elves were seriously tough. 10 days have gone by, and each day I practice my magic. Each time I shoot at the same spot, and now the hole in the boulder has gotten much bigger. At last, the tunnel was opened, and everyone cheered because now they could finally reach the village. The elder of the Dark Elves was truly grateful. He couldn't find the words to thank him for everything he had done. Shaw was surprised by how old the man seemed and started wondering about his age. I told him, out loud, not to worry about it. He was just glad they managed to prevent the magic from being triggered twice. He couldn't even picture the fuss Leela would have made if he'd tried this inside the castle. I wondered if maybe there's a special mineral here that you can't find anywhere else in the world, or maybe something with a really unique color. But one of the girls mentioned she noticed some black stones. The guy asked her again because he wondered if it might be obsidian. The girl thought it couldn't be obsidian because the stone broke apart easily. Faye answered that she didn't see how something so delicate could be useful. Shaw wants to meet him and find out his location. He heard that he is near a rock wall at the valley's entrance. The guy asked if they could show him around on the way back, and the girls happily agreed. Faith said Shaw was the one who really helped their village, and she promised to remember that. A limestone hill rose up ahead, and the girl pointed out that this was where the stones could be found. The elf explained that this layer is made of black stone, but it's so weak and crumbles so easily that you can't even use it for making arrowheads. Shaw realized he needed to start knocking, and when he got a small piece of rock, he wanted to make sure it was really what he thought. The man placed one stone on top of another and tried to light it on fire. Faye was shocked that this type of rock could actually burn. The guy was glad that Yugolki was around. It made him feel like this was what the real industrial revolution should be about. The elf was amazed to see the stones on fire and thought it was some kind of magic. The man explained that while magic helped light the fire, these stones could actually burn on their own. Just like that, they solved their fuel problem. Now they could even build a steam engine if they wanted to. No matter what, he'll bring the sample to Her Highness and tell her everything, so we can get everyone together to look into it. The girl wished they didn't have to walk so far since it was already getting dark. The guy said they'd find a place to stay tonight, but she didn't want to head back this late. She mentioned that they stopped in a field. Shaw was surprised by what he heard. Feifei calmly explained that they always live here and told him not to worry because they are elves. The guy said that wasn't the issue, he just didn't think he would fit in. The elf admitted it was a bit messy, but he could stay with her. She'd make sure he had a good meal. That morning, Shaw sat on the couch and stretched, feeling a dull ache in his back. After finishing his morning pull-ups, he glanced off to the side, curious about something. Faye was sound asleep, so the guy chose to slip out of the room without making a sound. The queen felt a bit annoyed and started to think about where he had gone. Then she realized he must have visited the Dark Elves' village and guessed it must be a nice place. Still, she hoped he had brought back some good news. The man agreed cheerfully. He placed a few pieces of coal on the table. Layla stared at them, confused, and said it just looked like an ordinary black rock. Now they found themselves inside Rasail's workshop. The man believed they were suggesting that this stone could work as fuel. The queen quickly figured out it wasn't a magic stone at all. The man explained it wasn't a magic stone and didn't contain any mana. Shaw then asked everyone to watch as he filled a special device with coal and lit it on fire. Leela was really impressed. Rissel added that this machine is super powerful and will solve their fuel problems. Shaw explained that this material could be used as fuel at home. By heating and treating the stones to clean them, they can turn them into a fuel called coke. This process will make it possible to produce more iron than ever before. But there was one big problem: smoke pollution. When coal burns, it releases smoke and soot that spread across the city, making the air dirty and unhealthy for everyone. During the Industrial Revolution, burning coal for energy caused a lot of deadly air pollution. As countries grow and develop, this issue tends to get even worse. Leela figured he was probably trying to figure out a solution. He said of course he was. When smoke gets into the water, all the soot and toxins mix in too. The main issue with coal smoke is hydrogen sulfide, which mixes with water. The girl wondered what happens to the water after it absorbs this poison. However, there is a possible solution. She could put insects into the polluted water to help deal with the contamination. Insects are animals that eat dead bodies and dirt. They help keep rivers and canals clean, especially in places without proper sewage systems. They should consider how many insects there are, but they believe they can deal with it. Leela understood the plan, Rassel agreed it was smart, and the girl suggested sending some researchers to explore the coal mines. To start mining, they'll need to build roads, clear some forest areas, and put up bridges. They'll also have to lay down new railway tracks to move the coal, so there's a lot of construction ahead. Stella caught the girl's attention and told her that Shaw had returned. The guy quickly looked over at the master and Stella, confused about what was going on. Rubia was confused about where he had disappeared for 10 days without telling her or his master. He just said he had some business to handle in the Dark Elf village. The girls were really surprised when they heard about the Dark Elves. The guy had no idea what that meant. The girls assumed he went there just to stare at the women, since everyone knows Dark Elves are famous for their curves. Shaw disagreed, explaining he was just trying to help them. The master understood all this, but couldn't decide if he liked her chest more or Dark Elves. Shaw said, naturally, his master's chest was the best. Rubia was now curious about how he came to those conclusions. I understood he must have seen something similar before, Faye. Just then, Faye walked in and asked Shaw why he was taking so long. Everyone gave her an irritated look. The most amazing part is that an elf and a dark elf came face to face, and they were both stunned by how different they looked from each other. Shaw started feeling uncomfortable and mentioned that this was just one of the 36 clever tricks people use. The girl called his name loudly, sounding upset, and as she walked away, he shouted goodbye to her. After sprinting from one shop to another, they finally found a spot to rest. Shaw was out of breath from all the running. It quickly became obvious to him that elves and dark elves really didn't get along. Fifi shared a legend from the dark elves. Long ago, elves and dark elves were one people with shared ancestors, living together in the elven world. But these people couldn't get along, and their fighting ended up destroying their own world. They had to leave everything behind and start fresh in a new place. Shaw was deeply moved by how powerful this story was. Suddenly, they burst into the show, yelling that everyone needed to leave right away. People started rushing out of the city, screaming that something dangerous was happening and they had to escape. One of the people in the crowd paused and looked at the show's leader, asking for his help. Tears ran down his face as he explained that a demon had kidnapped a child. Shaw was really surprised and turned to see where everyone was rushing from. A boy from the orphanage was trapped in the grip of a giant creature and shouting for help. The demon was enormous, surrounded by swirling leaves. Downstairs, people were calling for help for the child. A harpy was holding the boy, and Fei was confused about why she was there. Shaw realized that both his lightning powers and Fei's magic could reach the child. As soon as he wondered what to do, the answer popped into his mind. He remembered the slingshot he once made while playing with the kids at the orphanage. If he teams up with Fei and they use their magic together, it should be enough to defeat the enemies. Kinetic energy depends on mass and increases a lot with speed. At the same moment, he fired a projectile straight at the monster. The heavier the bullet, the more powerful it becomes, but if you use magic to make it lighter and move faster, it gets even stronger. And if you turn off the magic just before the bullet hits the target, its power will increase even more. Shaw knew she was strong enough to seriously hurt someone if she had to. He understood that he had to shoot the man again to make sure he was stopped. Suddenly, an arrow flew through the air and struck the monster right in the heart, leaving the guy amazed. Raisel aimed his bow at the monster, calling it a filthy beast and demanding that it release the boy. Shaw noticed Raisel and thanked him for stepping in. The monster, which looked like a giant bird, started growling and whining in pain. Fei announced she was getting ready to attack, and she planned to crush them with a heavy stone. The wind picked up around the bird, getting stronger and heavier, so everyone quickly ran inside the building for safety. The bird transformed and started shooting projectiles at the people in the town and the heroes. Suddenly, Stella showed up right in front of them, so the guys quickly raised a protective shield. Shaw smiled, happy to see her. He was really impressed by what she had accomplished. The barrier didn't hide anything from his sight, but it stopped any physical attacks from getting through. Stella smiled confidently and said she could even block a dragon's fire if she had to. Shaw couldn't figure out how it worked, but he noticed that light could go right through him. That means it wouldn't protect him from lasers, microwave energy, or attacks from solar panels that use sunlight. Suddenly, Rubella showed up, looking really annoyed. She saw Shaw and warned him to step back because she was about to lose control and something dangerous could happen. The man shouted for her to stop, thinking she was out of control. There were kids around, and she could put the whole city in danger. Rubia replied that some people's plans would have to change. The girl looked worried and unsure of what to do. Ficky jumped onto Rossel's balcony, grabbing his attention and interrupting what he was doing. Then, Jock asked him to hand over his bow, but she ended up just taking it herself. She drew back her bow and shot an arrow with all her strength right at the monster. The giant grabbed the boy in his huge hand and roared at the city once more. Suddenly, he released his grip, and the boy started falling quickly toward the ground. Faye shouted at Shaw, telling him to look. Shaw quickly glanced up and saw the boy falling. Without hesitating, he rushed toward the child, who was about to hit the ground. At that moment, Shaw chose to use his special ability to make the boy lighter. Shaw managed to catch him just in time, right before he hit the ground. Then, without any hesitation, Shaw quickly climbed up to the window. But he quickly jumped to the door and reached the girl before she knew it. She was so shocked that she couldn't even say a word. The man quickly handed her the child, asking her to look after him. The girl felt nervous and her hands shook as she held the boy. Tears filled her eyes, and she seemed unsure of what to do. Shaw urged her to get inside quickly, his voice filled with panic as he feared for everyone in the city and for the child who had almost been attacked by the bird. The girl took a deep breath, got herself together, and nodded, showing she understood. The bird soared up, instantly catching the attention of Shaw and Fei Fei. They quickly called the guy for help again as the bird launched another attack. Soon, many projectiles were flying toward him. He couldn't avoid them all and got struck by several arrows, one piercing straight into his heart. The girl cried out his name in fear. The man is struck by rocks and gets hurt. The dark elf cries out in worry. His phone shatters, and memories from his past suddenly come rushing back. The host looks into the camera, smiles, and says hello. He introduces himself as the host of the show and calls himself the King of Inventions from the channel. The guy holds up a round alarm clock to the camera and explains that today they're going to start putting it together. This type of alarm clock works all on its own. He realizes the recording stopped partway, and now he's checking what was captured. In the end, he reminds everyone to subscribe and leave a like on the channel. He sees that 12 people have watched his video so far, but only 3 have subscribed. Still, he feels happy because more people are joining and new comments keep popping up. The main character is thinking about what to film next and hopes to get a new camera someday. Suddenly, someone calls out his name and he quickly opens his eyes, taking a deep breath. The girl beside him explains that he was hurt in the chest and she's going to help right away. Shaw insists he's okay. There was something in his inside pocket that ended up saving his life. He wonders why he always takes such big risks. The guy asks where the harpy is. He spots her flying high above, watching carefully and circling in the sky. The girl says that now that the child is safe, she doesn't care what happens to her and is getting ready to cause an explosion. Shaw stops her, explaining they can't let that happen because they need to protect the city from any more harm. The girl asks what they should do now. He says he has an idea, but he isn't strong enough to use magic on something this big, so he needs her help. She gets what he means. The main character starts to run, telling her that he'll show her the way, and when he gives the signal, they can begin. The man suddenly creates a glowing ball and throws it at the harpy. She's caught off guard and totally shocked by his move. She steps back and Shaw yells at the master to begin right away. The girl confidently lifts her staff and casts a spell to make someone gain weight. The monster collapses, and the main character quickly grabs a knife and charges toward her. While flying, he imagines himself getting heavier and uses all his strength to stop his own heartbeat. Blood started pouring from the enemy's body. He collapsed to the ground and stopped moving. The monster was defeated. The girl asked Shaw if they had finished with her, and Shaw replied that they had, according to her. People cheered, celebrating the master of the show for defeating the harpy. Everyone felt excited and relieved. Stella commented that finding a fresh harpy corpse with so many useful parts was rare. She said she wanted someone to bring it to the castle later. Dad walks over to the boy and his mom, and they all hug each other, crying tears of joy. Suddenly, Layla shows up in the carriage and asks Shaw if he's all right. Shaw is shocked to see her there. The girl says she heard a strange noise and rushed over. She sees that he's badly hurt and asks if he managed to defeat the demon. The main character explains that he couldn't have done it by himself. His friends helped him too, including the master, Stella, and Fei Fei, the dark elf. He also says the gun shop owner gave him a lot of support, and he's really thankful for that. His Highness says that to reward their courage, she will give them 2 gold coins. The guy offers to pay for them, asking if she wants his help. Layla says she doesn't have any cash right now, but promises to pay him back later. The girl thanks Fei Fei for her support and tells her to visit them again soon. Inside the castle, Fei Fei and another knight have a friendly sword fight to see who is better. The girl completely wins the fight by taking away her opponent's weapon. Layla stands confidently with her hands on her hips, smiles with pride, and says there's no question about how talented she is. Her assistant asks if she's really sure, since dark elves can't be trusted. She agrees, saying that's true, but adds that even though the dark elves know about the village on their land, they aren't official citizens of this territory. But they're always willing to hire the best people they can find. The girl replied that she'd heard they worked hard to keep the show safe and make sure nothing bad happened in the city. She explains that Mizuki has already gone to the Empire and offers to replace her as an escort. However, the elf is suspicious and doesn't trust her. She asks if this means she'll get paid. Layla, a bit shy, says yes, she will. The guy is really happy for his girlfriend. The girl shares that working in a castle is like a dream come true for a dark elf. She thanks the main character with all her heart. Meanwhile, Layla, quietly watching, comments that she'll probably change her mind and regret it later. After some time, the guy enters the room and notices his broken phone. Even though he's not in perfect shape, he's always been a good friend to his phone. He realizes he can't record a video about all the cool inventions and magic he's created in this world. The man places it in a box, shuts the lid, and says thank you for saving his life. He sits on the bed, lost in thought, trying to figure out how to deal with the worries and fears that keep bothering him. The master explained that demons usually don't go after people in this world. He knows they get upset when someone enters their land, which explains why they attack. But the harpy came straight to the city to harm people, and Shaw started to think there might be something wrong with her. A few weeks later, the main character is strolling down the street when he spots a carriage. He can't help but laugh quietly to himself, feeling both amused and a bit surprised. Shaw notices she's living a life of luxury and starts to question why she always uses the back gate when important people usually walk right through the front. Suddenly, Nim calls out to him from behind. He greets her with a cheerful good morning. Nim asks where he was rushing off to. He explains that he just came back from the forest, where he was gathering some ingredients. The main character asks if she wants some breakfast. The girl tells him that Her Highness is waiting in her office because they have a visitor. He guesses this visitor is the same person who arrived in that cart. At the office, Leela asks Rubia how everything is going. Rubia tells her that she can't really help with anything. Then, a guy walks in and asks if Leela wanted to talk to him. Layla is happy he's finally here. The girl introduces the show to Princess M. Iluna. He gives a polite bow and says he's pleased to meet her. The girl with the scar on her face says her name is M. Iluna Faltas, the first princess of Faltas. She tells everyone to just call her Maruna. The princess explains that in Faltas, he's known as a respected master who always seeks the truth, and she believes he's the only one who can help her. The guy sees her burn and understands she's really hurt. He asks what happened, and she explains that she was out in the woods picking plants like she always does for fun, when suddenly a demon attacked her. Recently, people have been talking about demons attacking others, but she never imagined it could happen to her. Layla recalls seeing harpies just the other day. She's worried because more demons seem to be showing up around Farain, and there are even rumors that flying dragons have been spotted nearby. The guy is surprised to hear about the dragons. The girl looks at Shaw and asks if he can help with Maluna's injuries. Shaw replies that if his master couldn't heal her, there's nothing he can do either. The main character recalls that in his world, burns are usually treated by grafting healthy skin or by growing new skin from small samples. Suddenly, the guy remembers that he made a copy of the orchid using magic twice. Now, he starts to wonder if he could use the same trick on his own skin. The girl asks him if he can think of a better idea. The main character explains that he has a possible solution in mind, but he's not sure if it will actually work or what might happen if they try it. However, the man explains that it will take some time for it to heal and recover. The princess agrees to his terms, adding that she sees nothing good in the unattractive princess from the royal family. She says if she can't get her old face back, she won't be able to go home at all. The guy is confused and doesn't get what she means. Maruna puts her hand on her heart, looks determined, and says she has nothing left to lose. She tells him to go ahead and do it. He can't understand why she feels worthless just because her looks have changed. He doesn't get why appearance means so much to her. The girl says that what really matters about a person isn't just how they look, but their values and what's inside. Maruna claims she's the princess of a tiny kingdom called Faltas. For her family and country to thrive, she believes she has to marry the right person at just the right moment. That's why she feels it's her royal duty to always look beautiful. The man asks if getting married for her country is really her destiny. The woman smiles and says yes, she was meant for this. She's a rose, not a wildflower. The other girls quietly watch what's happening. The main character tells her that he gets how she feels. He adds that this method has never been tried on people before, so no one knows what side effects or problems could happen. The show tells the girl she needs to be prepared for anything. She says she's ready. Soon, the princess is lying on the operating table. The main character stands beside her, wearing a doctor's outfit and a mask over his face. He grabs a scalpel, takes a deep breath, and tries to steady his nerves. The main character believes that if anything goes wrong, the master will step in to help, so he feels ready to give it a try. The man says he'll start cleaning near the shoulder with some alcohol, and Myrna says okay. Next, he gives anesthesia to numb the area. Using 4 special clamps, he carefully dips the needed object into the liquid. He explains that it's a special medicine that numbs the area for a while, so she won't feel any pain. He actually uses spider venom as the anesthetic. While making chocolate, he discovered that the same process also removed the poison, and the result could be used as a local painkiller. The man tells her that soon, she'll be so cold she won't even notice if he's there. Maruna replies that she's already starting to feel really cold. Ruby is amazed that he could even think of something like this. He admits he doesn't know how to use paralysis magic. So even a regular doctor who doesn't know magic can still use it. He asks the patient if she's feeling sick or notices anything unusual. She replies that she feels fine and doesn't notice anything. The main character carefully makes a cut in the skin and starts to roll it up. While doing this, he casts spells to speed up healing and make his actions faster. The growth acceleration spell speeds up the growth of healthy skin. When used, this magic makes the cells that help skin grow multiply much faster. Skin cells start to multiply much faster than normal, helping new skin gradually cover and close the wound. In just 30 minutes, it can grow back about 3 centimeters, but with his magic, he's able to heal 5 to 6 centimeters each day. He tells her she's amazing today. The guy gives her a mirror, explaining it was once broken, but now it's almost completely fixed. The girl looks at the mirror, smiles, and says she's never seen anything so beautiful. The main character says he's sorry and asks her to pay attention to what he accomplished, not just her own reflection. The princess sees the healing and says it's truly amazing. After some time, Layla enjoys pancakes topped with creamy Mont Blanc and sweet boiled beans. The main character is surprised to learn that they're cousins. Layla explains that her late mother and Queen Felties were sisters. The girl adds that they only get to meet once a year, but they used to play together a lot at the Fardy's family's lake villa. Maruna says she really misses those times, while the guy just stares at them, clearly surprised. The princess says this place feels like a whole new world. She sees tasty pastries she's never seen before. The room is bright, filled with sparkling, crystal-like glass. She tells Layla that she must be lucky to have such a caring master, and assumes Layla might be a bit jealous. The girl looks at Shaw and tells him she'll pay him double, maybe even triple, if he chooses to work for her. Layla gets upset and demands to know how the girl can say something like that right in front of her. The main character laughs and says sorry, explaining that he has to say no because he promised Her Highness he would help make this country better. He can't just walk away now. The girl is amazed by the master's promise and thinks he's like a real knight. She's never met anyone like him before, since most skilled masters usually work for more important people. He says it's not about the money. He does have research funds, but for now, he just needs enough for food, and that's what matters most. Layla explains to the girl that the money from the show goes to an orphanage. Maruna is surprised to hear this. The main character explains that everything is done to support Farain, because children are the country's greatest treasure. The girl finds him odd, but the princess insists there's a reason for his behavior. Maruna thinks it's not right when a talented child misses out on opportunities just because of their background. She believes supporting these kids can help them grow into strong leaders for their country's future. The main character starts to wonder if the princess has real talent. Layla is surprised he didn't notice it before. The girl mentions she learned from a master. Shaw is about to reply, but just then Stella enters and says she smells something sweet. Maruta greets her warmly, saying it's been a while. She's a bit surprised to see the girl. Stella is surprised by the scar and asks what kind it is, calling it ugly. This makes the main character realize that Stella was actually the princess's master. They cared for her for 3 days and everything seemed fine, but on the 4th day, Princess Melona's suddenly developed a high fever. The treatment worked by speeding up your body's natural healing, helping your skin recover and grow back much faster than usual. She quickly sees that using so much energy has left her exhausted, and now she really needs to rest. But then, out of nowhere in the middle of the night, she gets an unexpected call to action. Layla invites him to join them and share the story once more. But the main character forgets where he was in the story. The girl helps him remember. He stopped at the part where the heroes are heartbroken about their love that never worked out. The main character asks the girl how she is doing, and she says she's feeling a lot better today. The guy notices that, little by little, Princess Melona's burn scars are fading away. The main character stands still and gently waters the plant in front of him, looking relaxed and focused. Suddenly, a princess walks over and tells him that his plant is very rare. She asks if she can take a closer look, and the guy agrees. Shaw says the treatment is almost finished. Maruna nods and tells him she's really grateful and isn't sure how to thank him. The main character reassures everyone, saying what matters most is that she's okay. The girl blushes and hugs him tightly. He drops the watering can and tells her she shouldn't do that. She says sorry and admits she's never felt this way before. The main character tells her that once her face is healed, she'll need to start doing her job. The girl says she understands, but she's still a bit unsure. Shaw admits he might have confused the happiness from his scars healing with having feelings for her, but the girl disagrees, telling Shaw that he's truly a great person. Princess Maruna believes she's not the right match for him, and she's probably correct. She wonders if things would have turned out differently if he had met her before he met Layla. He gently says no, explaining that he feels grateful not just to her, but also to the master, Stella, and everyone who works at the castle. The girl asks him again, confused by what he means. The main character tells her he's talking about Miss Rubia. He explains that when he first came to the forest, Miss Rubia saved his life and taught him everything he knows. She's the reason he became a true master. He adds that if things hadn't happened that way, he never would have met her. The girl looks sad. She lets out a small, sad laugh and says she wishes she was just a wildflower instead of a rose. The princess started to walk away. Before she left, she mentioned that her parents would come to get her next week. The main character is amazed that the king and queen are coming to visit in person. She mentions she already let them know her burn scars are getting better. Still, the king and queen want to come see her and check on how she's doing themselves. The main character smiles and says he should let everyone see her beautiful face. The girl turns to him, tears in her eyes but smiling, and agrees. Next week, Mirota's face is completely healed. King Faltas and Queen Eliza are amazed and can't believe their eyes. The man says it's a miracle, but the woman is too shocked to believe it. Then the princess speaks up and explains that Shaw was the one who cured her face. The king shakes his hand and says he's just done something truly incredible. The guy looks surprised and a bit confused. He says this isn't a miracle, but a healing made possible by logic and magic, along with the princess's strength and determination to endure everything she went through. The king wants to thank him for rescuing the princess from great danger. The main character replies that even the most powerful people show respect to the king. The man says no, he thanks him, not as the ruler, but as the father of his dearly loved daughter. Foltas bows his head to show respect and expresses his gratitude. After some time, the main character invites the queen and princess into his workshop. He tells them to feel free to explore while they wait for the queen's meeting with the king to finish. A woman looks at Shaw and wonders if the magic that cured her daughter might also be helping other people. She touches her face and mentions that she's noticed new wrinkles around her eyes. The main character explains that these are normal wrinkles and offers to help her get rid of the sagging under her chin. She's surprised and asks if he really knows how to do that. He says helping her now is much easier than when he treated the princess's burn scars. Shaw asks if she wants to give it a try. The woman smiles and agrees enthusiastically. King Faltas and Layla finish their meeting. The man comments that even though their time together was brief, it was very productive. The girl guesses they must be busy, since they're already getting ready to go. Feltos tells his wife that it's time for them to get ready to go. Suddenly, he notices something unusual about how she looks. He asks Eliza what happened to her face, and the woman laughs, happy that he actually paid attention. She says she chose to trust the skills of a local craftsman. The man looks amazed and wonders if she has discovered the secret to staying young forever. The main character tells him she's still the same age as before. He just smoothed out her wrinkles a bit, but they'll come back soon. He can't figure out how that's possible. The king believes his magic will be a big hit with women. Soon, word spreads among royals and nobles everywhere about a mysterious magical cure. When the princess got her lovely skin back and the queen became young again, women from noble and royal families quickly sent in their applications, hoping to experience these amazing changes too. The main character is doing a procedure on a woman and tells her he's going to freeze her skin now. Day by day, her wrinkles and sagging skin fade away, but this isn't good for the show. He's nearly in tears, realizing he's not really a cosmetic surgeon. Layla and Shaw are enjoying some tea together. Layla notices that Shaw looks tired and unwell. Shaw tells her that he's feeling worn out because he keeps getting constant requests every day and his body can't handle it much longer. Layla is glad that he's earning money, but she's also a bit worried about his health. But then she remembers hearing that Maruno got lots of attention after her face changed. The girl wonders if that means Maruno wasn't pretty before. The man asks her if she thinks Princess Maruna will be able to find the right person to marry. The queen replies that there are plenty of people out there who would gladly show off just to impress others. In Maruna's opinion, there's someone in the far lane who could be a good match for her. His name is Viscaferus. People trust him, and he seems like a decent guy. But the girl thinks he isn't really husband material. Also, she feels the title is too boring and can't suggest it to anyone. The main character responds by saying the title doesn't really matter, and offers a random example. He suggests putting him in charge of making crystal glass, announcing that the Viscount has managed to produce it on a large scale and giving him a new title. At this rate, he'll become a duke very soon. The girl says it's a lie, but the guy thinks it's just how it looks at first. He believes Princess Maruna trained with a true expert, and he's sure she can be trusted to make glass. The queen claims that Princess Maruna had feelings for Shaw and blames him for it, calling him a terrible person. Shaw is confused and has no idea what she means. Her Highness sent a letter to Falties, introducing the Viscount. She explained that the Viscount's lands were seeing a lot of new industry, and she believed a bright future was ahead for everyone there. Princess Maruna fell for him at first sight, and now they're happily engaged. The main character made a quick visit to the Viscount's estate to show them how to make glass. If he decides to run a glass factory, none of the other projects will work out. Still, if he wanted to keep the people of Farain safe, he knew he couldn't back down. The main character hasn't been to his mentor's cabin in the woods for a really long time. Rubia, looking concerned, asks him why he came all this way and what he's doing. The man explains that he started thinking about the harpy after hearing she'd been attacked by a demon recently. Shaw believes that if something unexpected happens, Farain should know how to protect himself instead of counting on magic. That's why he wants to create a fire potion, which is basically gunpowder. The girl gasps in shock and asks if he really plans to use it as a weapon. The show confirms that, yes, that's exactly what he means. As an expert, he's confident she can picture what could happen if the weapon gets too strong. At first, Rubia considers it, then agrees, but tells him she won't get involved in his plans. The girl says that if Shaw ever tries to do something bad, she will do whatever she can as his master to stop him. But the man just smiles and happily says he's glad she is his boss. He says that if that's the case, he can start working. Because it's risky, the main character asks her to stay with him. He gets straight to work on making gunpowder. The main character plans to create it using saltpeter. The main ingredients for this are humus collected from the forest and manure from the owner's home. Simply put, it's mostly his master's trash, with a little bit of his own thrown in. It mixes manure and humus, then uses magic to speed up fermentation. As a result, it begins to have a strong, unpleasant smell. The main character pinches his nose because of the bad smell, wondering why he still gets involved in these things, even in a different world. Shaw tells himself it's all for the good of the country. The smell isn't pleasant, but he's known it since he was a kid. His parents live out in the countryside, where sewage trucks pass by every so often. He tosses some crushed pills his way. Suddenly, Rubia walks in. She wrinkles her nose and asks, "What's that awful smell?" The main character says he told her to stay home because it's too risky to go out, and she should also remember to cover her nose for safety. The girl shouts that she has no idea what he means. She thinks the master must notice when a student truly understands the truth. The girl steps closer, but quickly turns away because of the strong odor. Shaw reminds her that he tried to warn her. He tells her to just watch from a distance and not get too close. The fermentation process has really sped up, and now there should be some saltpeter in this liquid. He plans to remove it from here. Nitrate easily dissolves in water. He needs to add this substance to a cauldron of water and use magic to heat it up. Someone might not enjoy what happens next. Once you're done processing all the products, let the water in the boiler evaporate. Now you'll see the inside walls of the pot covered with a thick layer of white, needle-shaped crystals. These are called nitrocrystals. The mixture has many impurities, but by recrystallizing it several times, they can make it purer and increase the frequency. Rubia wonders if it's a fire potion. Shaw shakes his head and says this is just one of the ingredients. He'll go back to the workshop tomorrow to finish everything. Shaw wants to make black powder, but for that, he needs more than just gunpowder. He also needs charcoal and sulfur. The girl is surprised and says it's incredible that he made something useful out of something so smelly. The main character explains that he created it from waste. She jokingly asks if he used her own waste, which leaves him speechless and unsure how to respond. Rubia is furious at him and shouts loudly. In the workshop, Stella laughs about how Shaw made a weapon using Rubia's poop. The person next to her gets upset and starts to blush. The girl comments that it's no wonder he smells bad. The main character replies that he's just taken a bath and his clothes are clean, so he wonders if there's something wrong with his sense of smell. The steel uses its power to clean him up. He's surprised it can get rid of odors and thinks that's pretty handy. She wants to know what he plans to do with these crystals. The man tells her he will mix saltpeter and charcoal with more saltpeter, using a 7-to-2-to-1 ratio. He says they should grind everything very fine and mix it all together really well. Stella wonders if it's actually a weapon. The host invites you to test it yourself. It takes just a tiny bit of material, then removes the air to keep it from catching fire. The main character uses a candle to set it on fire, and it quickly catches. Stella wonders why it's such a big deal. Shaw says it should be pressed down after that. The girl is confused and asks again. He explains that it needs a bit of water and should be wrapped in a cloth. Shaw says you can put pressure on it, but they use special tricks to squeeze it really quickly. He explains that by compressing it, the reaction works better and becomes much stronger. Once it dries out and turns crumbly, they use their magic to break it down into small grains. Now, he's about to light it up again. He grabs a candle and lights the powder spread out on the cloth. The flames quickly burst up, burning with strong, bright fire. Rubia says it's a whole new situation. Stella says it's incredible. The black powder is finished and ready to use. He just needed to get ready what he had asked the dwarf master for, and then he could show it to Her Highness. After some time, the queen wonders if he's made anything new. He smiles and says yes, inviting her to come and see it. He takes out a basic weapon with a fliplock mechanism. Both the barrel and bullets were made by skilled dwarf craftsmen. The girl asks what it is, so the guy explains that this tube has gunpowder at one end. Then, he puts a lead bullet in from the top. He pulls the trigger and shoots at the dummy. The bullet goes right through the armor. All three girls stare in shock. He tells them the lead ball shot out and punched a hole right through the armor. If someone is wearing the armor, this attack can go through their body and might even hurt tough-skinned demons. Layla wonders if it's magic, but Shaw says no, it's not magic, it's just science. The girl wonders if anyone, even those with no training, could really use this to shoot. She asks if ordinary people like peasants or girls could use it to fight monsters. The man agrees with her, smiling. The queen touches her chin and, thinking deeply, says that this truth is actually quite scary. The main character suddenly bursts out laughing. He asks the girls why they're so scared, promising that she'll figure out how to make use of him. The girls are left confused and unsure how to react. The queen warns him not to play any tricks on her. He listens and does what she says. The main character explains that they won't sell weapons or gunpowder because they might need them to keep their country safe. Gunpowder is helpful in daily life because it can break rocks and make coal mining much faster. Stella warns that if this spreads throughout the continent, it will be like unleashing chaos. Dynamite was created by Nobel to help build things, but people soon started using it for war. The main character knows that history shows people often misuse power and technology, not just for peace. That's why they don't want this new world to repeat those old mistakes. Layla agrees that if someone powerful gets hold of it, a war could start. But after the Harpy attack and the Maluna incident, she sees that demons are starting to cause more trouble. Overall, trouble could start at any moment, and citizens or villagers might get attacked. The girl knows that, as part of the royal family, it's their job to stay prepared and defend their people when hard times come. She trusts the main character to handle making the weapons. He assures her he gets it. Layla also insists that this information stays top secret, like a government secret. He chose to make gunpowder on his own during his free time, since working with others to produce it on a larger scale could cause the secret to get out. Since Her Highness trusted him with a confidential budget, he chose to buy manure as raw material for the livestock. He believed this would make production much more efficient. Their stockpiles keep getting bigger, but they have to handle black powder carefully because even a little friction or a spark from static electricity can make it catch fire. They keep it damp and spread it all around the castle. When they need it dry, they simply use magic to do it instantly. He decided to build another weapon. Later, they tested their new anti-aircraft gun at the training ground. After firing, there was a sudden explosion. Kaka and Tika say it's really awesome. They're Chick's twin brothers. The guys used to be hunters and have sharp eyesight. Kaka jokes that it's because they had a clear view. Tika says he would have done the same in their place. They are able to recognize animals even from a distance of 1,000 kilometers, so they decided to stay alert and ready. The main character jokes about how close they are now. Layla smiles and says she's impressed he traveled such a long way, then asks how far he can really go. Kaka thinks he's already flown 400 stops. He adds that if you raise your goal just a bit, he'll happily travel 32 more stops. They can picture the perfect shape of the parabola in their minds, just like the formula shows. Shaw is impressed by their skill. The queen admits she never knew this could be done without magic. They wonder if they can create the same magic effects just by using this tube and some magic dust. The main character agrees and says it's best to keep this secret. He also tells them not to bring the powder. The others think that's a good idea. Layla looks at the Chick brothers and tells them they're perfect for this job, so from now on, they'll join the show as the new shooters. The girl also tells them that their pay will go up based on how hard they work. The brothers thank her, and Layla asks the main character to keep working on new defensive weapons. The girl mentions that Razel felt sad because the main character was too busy to visit him. Shaw admits he feels a bit embarrassed and says it was an awkward situation. She says that they're currently digging in the coal mines and working in the artisan's workshop. They're also building roads and bridges, just like he asked them to. She also mentions that it will be a long time before there's a special event to show off their inventions, and they wonder why he doesn't come to visit them soon. He nods in agreement and promises he'll take care of it. The main character grins and says it's time to get ready for the biggest event of the festival. The main character stops in awe, looking up at the giant column and exclaims, "Wow, that's massive." She came to see the blast furnace in the castle's workshop because it was finally complete. The show described her as incredible. The main characters demonstrated most of the devices, while Mr. Rassel and the dwarves used their skills to finish building the blast furnace. The man says the best part is that he taught them how to turn coal into coke. Before, they needed magic to heat things up, but now with this furnace, they can make and ship iron without any magic at all. But the blast furnace needs fresh air to work, and right now, it seems like people are still using some kind of magic for that. Shaw remembers that back on Earth, steam engines helped push air into the furnace. He's eager to build something similar here as soon as he can. Building an external heat engine or an internal combustion engine takes a lot of work and progress. Even if people understood how these machines work, it would still take a long time and much effort before they could actually make one that works. Shaw believes that if they explain the main ideas to Rassel and his team, they'll be able to build an engine like this. However, they'll still need at least one working example to guide them. Suddenly, the person beside Shaw turns to him and thanks him for all his efforts. He says everyone is doing their best. Rassel nods in agreement. He says they've set up a trolleybus line inside the castle, making it much easier to move coal and goods around. The man explains that trolleybuses will play an important role in coal mines. The guy is happy to see things working out. The man believes this is just the beginning of something big. Roads and bridges were constructed to reach the mines, and coal was transported in just 2 or 3 wagons at once. Over time, even more energy was needed for the process. The city is becoming livelier every day. More people are getting interested in how their city is changing. The main character is walking down the street and suddenly notices something unusual. He wonders what this amazing building could be, and then a young man walks up to him and asks if he's the owner. The man is happy they got the chance to meet the master. He quickly ushers the main character inside and says he has something truly special to show them. The show moves quickly, leaving no time to figure things out, and someone asks what kind of store it is. He notices the man beside him looks suspicious and instantly thinks this must be a shady place. The guy starts to feel really nervous. The man asks which servants he likes best. The main character is surprised to find out there are servants here at all. But then he remembers how advanced this world is, so it's no wonder there are people working as servants here. The main character didn't notice at first because they weren't in the castle. The princess simply hires as many servants as she wants, as long as she can pay them. The man points at one of the servants and says that if you need a guard, this is the right person. He explains that this servant used to be a warrior, and the price is just 50 gold coins, which he calls a great bargain. The main character says he would never buy people to work for him, because he believes that's completely wrong. He's surprised because he doesn't like having servants around. The man explains that this place welcomes children of bankrupt merchants and local nobles. They take in anyone who has no other options. The man talks about how, sooner or later, someone will buy them. He mentions that if he's the one who buys it, the servant would be fortunate. The show connects this idea to how the world has a kind of safety net, protecting people in tough situations. The show gives a cold response and says thanks. The main character gets ready to leave, but suddenly a tough-looking man blocks his path. The man says there are some clever people around who might be able to help. He mentions that the girls upstairs know how to read, write, and do math, and he suggests checking on them. Shaw realizes they're not going to let him leave, so the main character agrees and says he'll just observe instead. He says he'll wait downstairs, so he has plenty of time to look around and explore. But the main character notices many beautiful girls upstairs and thinks it feels like a VIP area, similar to a luxury car showroom. Suddenly, Shaw spots a stunning girl. In his mind, he can't help but wonder if she used to be someone important, maybe even from a noble family. He can't quite figure out the strange feeling he has. Maybe she just looks a little too perfect. Suddenly, the girl stands up and starts walking over to him. She steps up to the bars and gives a respectful nod. The girl thanks him for picking her up and calls him Mr. Zero, which surprises Shaw and reminds him of what Maria had told him about someone called Zero. The man guesses that she knows Zero too. He says he isn't Zero, but actually the one in charge, and asks if she recognizes him. She replies yes, and adds that Zero is her master. He asks her if she knows Maria from the orphanage, and if she helped care for her when she was sick. The girl says yes. She explains that she purified streptomycin and gave it to Maria as an injection. The main character is shocked, because in his world, streptomycin is a special antibiotic used to treat tuberculosis. He can't figure out how she even knows about this medicine, since no one here seems to be aware that such an antibiotic exists. Shaw walks downstairs and invites the man to come with him. Once they're upstairs, he asks if the main character likes anyone. The main character smiles, points at the girl, and says he likes her. The man proudly says that, like any true expert, he has a sharp eye and an exceptionally clever girl. She's great at reading, writing, and counting. The guy wants to know the price, and the man says he can have it for 250 gold coins. Shaw is shocked by the price and doesn't get why it's so high. The man explains that the girl is not just smart, but also very talented. They lost many people when they caught her. The main character is shocked and asks himself if this can really be happening. He says he only has $100 in his pocket. One man gives him a threatening look, while the other thinks he's just making a joke. The guy gets an idea, gives them a piece of fruit, and asks if it will fit. The bald man calls it just a plain fruit to sell. The other guy is confused. How could something that looks so bad cost 100 gold? But the bald man explains it's actually a raspberry, and anyone would pay 300 or even 400 gold for this. The man smiles and says he'll have to use berries instead of gold. Shaw worries about how expensive Lil Merch berries are and feels like he's losing a lot, but he manages to stay calm. The girl is let out of the cage. Her name is Nanami. She answers his questions, but she keeps her own thoughts to herself. He wonders if Maria might know more about it. After some time, Maria seems surprised that he has brought her here. The main character asks if she knows these people. Maria says yes, and explains that this is the doll Mr. Zero brought. Shaw is confused and doesn't get what she means by the doll. The girl explains that at first, she thought it was one of his helpers, but then Zira-sama told her it was actually a robot. But the main character is confused and asks if she's talking about a robot or something similar. Dinami explains that, in a way, you could call her a robot, since robots are the closest comparison. The story suggests she doesn't really have her own thoughts or choices and is just following a program. The girl agrees with him, and Shaw reacts with surprise. The main character says she feels warm and soft just like a real person. He thinks there's no way to tell her apart from a human. He even notices details like her hair, moist lips, her teeth, and even the presence of saliva. The man leaned in very close to the girl, trying to look inside her mouth. Maria stood next to him, looking shocked. The host apologized for the situation. He then asked Anami where Zero was and who Zero was, since Zero seemed powerful enough to make something like this happen. The girl says her body is completely natural and not artificial. She explains that they got separated after an accident, and she has no idea where he went. The main character says he was hoping they could find out where he is now. She feels safe now that he's here and hopes he'll visit them again soon. After some time, the main character turns to Nanami and asks her a question. He wants to know the square root of 2, and she asks how many digits he needs. He replies that he needs it to 10 decimal places. The girl tells him the number he's looking for is 4,142,135,623. Then Shaw asks her what the cube root of 2 is, and she replies immediately with 259,210,498. The main character is amazed at how fast she comes up with the answer. He tested different calculations, and no matter how many numbers he used, the answer came back right away. People call him a human calculator. There's no doubt about her talent. He comes up with ideas in his mind, and she brings them to life using the machine. One day, he just decided to create a gear for fun. Now, when working with rotary, cycloid, or other complex gears, he can easily imagine the design and figure out how to make it correctly, all in his mind. She's like a real bio-CNC machine. At first, he thought he was tricked, since this kind of machine would cost millions in his world. The main character also remembers a man who said he hopes to meet him again. To him, her knowledge is truly priceless. He has the strongest helper Zero has ever given. The main character believes there's nothing he can't build. After a while, the main character and Layla are driving together. Layla laughs excitedly and says how amazing it feels. She asks Shaw if this is his carriage without a horse. Shaw smiles and says yes. He explains that it's actually called a car because it moves on its own. The girl likes this name. The main character explains that this is a car, so it never gets tired like a horse and can keep going all day as long as it has water and fuel. Layla admits that when he first showed up with a new girl, she felt confused, but now she realizes this invention really matters. The guy, however, has no idea which girl Layla means. When the masters discovered Nanami, he was almost caught, but thanks to his skill, he managed to complete his work perfectly. Ami appeared just at the right time, using his full potential. Together, they succeeded and built a steam engine. This engine works using steam. Coal is burned to heat water until it becomes steam. The steam then moves through pipes, pushing the pistons back and forth. This creates a simple forwards and backwards motion. The back and forth movement is turned into spinning motion using a crank and a flywheel. This spinning force is then sent to the wheels, making the vehicle move. The most famous steam engine in the world is well known, but its design leaves out many important details. Even so, people were still able to build something like it, which is impressive, though a bit misleading. Nanami plans everything in his head, creates the design, then sends it to the machine. All he needs to do after that is put the parts together. That's how their workflow goes. Shaw built the cauldron by hand, taking care of every little detail himself. He added his own special touch, but it's not very fast. It only goes about 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. The girl asks if he can make it go any faster. The queen looks at the main character and asks if they can speed up, saying it would be much more exciting and fun to go even faster. The main character notices that the princess is really into fast rides and thinks he could actually go even quicker if his bike had more gears. He tells her that the roads are bumpy and speeding up on them could be risky. But if they construct a railway, they'll be able to travel both faster and more safely. Leela is confused by this idea. Shaw explains that it reminds him of the railway they made inside the castle. And if this connects the country to coal mines, moving goods will be much faster and more efficient. He also believes that building more railways between cities will help more people and goods travel easily. In his world, railways were a key part of the Industrial Revolution, and he hopes this world will do the same. Shaw says it will need a lot of time and money, because it's not just about helping their own country, it's about making progress for the whole world. After a moment, Maluna suddenly gasps in amazement, clearly impressed. She says it's exciting but not fair. Layla tells her she should join the show because it's so much fun. The girl asks if she's allowed to try. In this situation, the girl wants to drive, so she jumps in the driver's seat. The main character is surprised that Princess Maluna is the one who's going to steer the car. Driving it is really easy, just like using an automatic car with only one speed, no clutch or gears to worry about. Maluna then asks Hay if she can buy this car from him. The girl offers him 500 gold coins as payment. The main character is shocked because that's a huge amount of money, about 100 million yen in his world. He wonders if it's just a small amount. The princess tells him it's not much, because she's planning to use it as a model to create and sell more. The girl calls this a smart way to invest naturally. The main character realizes this is a really smart idea. He feels inspired and motivated, sensing a real business opportunity. Some parts are a bit tricky to copy, but he knows she's very intelligent. It might take a while, but they're confident they'll be able to start mass producing soon. He knows he'll have to get out of her car sooner or later. A craftsman watched how a steam engine works on a machine. Inspired by what he saw, he started building his own steam engine in his workshop. The man says it's a smart invention. At first, they started making a machine with a steam engine to move coal carts. Normally, this kind of project would need 5 to 10 years of dedicated research, but surprisingly, it took just a month and a half to build a working car. The festival is finally here, the big day when Farain is set to show everyone his new invention. At the festival, the queen speaks to everyone and thanks them for coming. The girl asks the person beside her to say something before the festival begins. Everyone is watching, and he feels nervous and unsure of what to say. The main character greets everyone warmly and wishes them a pleasant evening. He introduces himself as the star of tonight's show and proudly mentions that he is a student of the great master of Rubia. He explains that they are about to visit the exhibition halls, both inside and outside the castle, where everyone will get a chance to see firsthand the impressive achievements their country has created on its own. But it was the main character who found them. They were the one who brought them to life through a lot of trying and learning from mistakes. He fondly remembers his friends who are artisans and feels grateful for the talented craftsmen in his country, as well as the materials team that helps them do their best work. The man repeats what Princess Layla said and adds that many people share his hopes for the community. He lifts his hand, asking for kindness and support from everyone. Suddenly, colorful fireworks light up the sky above the castle. The crowd looks up in amazement, surprised by the beautiful explosions. Even though he was in a rush, he still made the fireworks in the right colors. Orange comes from burning sodium salts, white comes from tin, and green comes from copper. The tube for the fireworks is just a simple bamboo stick. This made the main character think about the toy mortars he used to build in the master's house. That's where he first started creating unusual inventions, and the people around him always said that fireworks were something amazing. Rubia admires the stunning painting, completely captivated. Suddenly, Shaw approaches her and greets her, calling her master, which takes her by surprise. Shaw then suggests they step outside the city together for a moment. People wander through the market. A guy gives a food skewer to a girl and asks her to hold it. He says, "Thanks, Rubia." The girl asks if he's sure he wants to walk like that, since he looks like a superstar today. The main character reassures her, saying everything is under control. The rest of the day is just business meetings, and he's sure Her Highness will handle them perfectly. Rubia smiles and says her whole life feels different now that he's here. The girl remembers how much she longed for a peaceful life in the woods. The guy looks away, feeling awkward, and apologizes for how things turned out. Ruby smiles gently, reassuring him that it's all okay. The girl tells him that if she had stayed in the forest, nothing would have happened between them. She glances at him shyly and says she wouldn't react like that. The guy blushes, a bit confused by what she means. The girl blushes and admits she should apologize to him. Ruby says that if he's really this strong, she can recommend him to the Imperial College so he's recognized as a true master. That way, he'll be able to move forward with his journey. The girl asks if he understands why she didn't go through with it. The main character, feeling shy, quietly thinks to himself that maybe she wanted to stay because of him. He looks away and says he doesn't care about any of these formalities, and he's not leaving Farain with or without her. He also tells the guy that he should apologize. The main character explains why he kept his secret hidden for so long. Rubia is curious about what he was hiding from them. Even though he's nervous, he finally admits that he came from another world. The girl's eyes go wide in shock. Suddenly, a man in the crowd looks up and asks, "What's that in the sky?" The person beside him squints and says, "It's too dark, I can't see anything." One person thinks it's a bird, but another says it's way too big. Suddenly, a man yells that she's getting closer. He stares in shock, not trusting what he sees. There's no way this is real, but yes, right in front of him is a dragon. Suddenly, a monster attacks the city, and everyone starts running away, terrified and screaming. The main character is shocked to see that the creature is actually a dragon. A huge dragon soars above the city, sending everyone running for cover. But instead of attacking, the dragon simply glides away. The main character watches in confusion, while someone in the crowd wonders aloud if the dragon really left. A man asks what's going on. Shaw looks at Rubia and checks if she's all right. Rubia says yes, she's fine. The main character thinks she should go back to the castle. He feels anxious because there are more and more demons around, and he never imagined that dragons might show up in the city. They're having a business meeting at the castle right now. Just let the queen know, no need to worry anyone else. The main character quietly tells Layla that a dragon has shown up in the city. Layla doesn't believe it and asks him to repeat what he just said. The next morning, Mizuki sent him a message from the Empire using a postbird. The queen read the note tied to the bird's leg and shared the news. Dragons had attacked the Empire the night before. She's shocked by the letter. It says the Empire is burning because of dragon fire. Shaw figures out that this must be the same dragon they spotted yesterday. Layla adds that it flew to the west. The main character asks the princess what it all means. With a look of fear on her face, the girl explains that it means he will have to return here again. Everyone was shocked. The queen quickly told her assistant to get Mizuki to safety right away. She obeys, and Shaw realized that the Empire's capital was about 400 kilometers from the city. Shaw wondered how fast dragons could fly. Stella explains that they travel at a speed of about 50 to 60 leagues each hour. The man repeats, amazed, about 60 leagues per hour. 1 league is roughly 16 kilometers, so the dragon is flying at about 100 kilometers per hour. Even if we include the time spent on Mizuki's letter, at worst, the dragon will reach them in just 2 hours. The main character asks Stella and Feifei if they've ever battled dragons, guessing this because they seem quite old. Stella looks shocked and quickly says no. She also tells him not to bring up her age. "Kid, just think about it. Maybe they can use magic to stop fire." The girl points out that they're dealing with legendary creatures here. The elf explains that, according to ancient books, dragons used to burn entire civilizations with their fire and even ate people. Shaw and Rubia are stunned by what she says. The main character suddenly feels a headache coming on and is close to tears. Layla firmly insists that they have to do something about it. The man suggests moving everyone from the town to safety in the forest. He speaks to the medium, and she replies. Shaw asks her to have all the beastmen run through the city to warn everyone. They should tell the townspeople to quickly head into the forest with whatever they're wearing. The maid nods and hurries off. The main character says he'll quickly set up his defensive guns on the walls to get ready. He doesn't know if these weapons will actually hurt dragons, but maybe the noise will be enough to scare them off. Rubia says she's ready to fight, while Stella admits she's always wanted to do something like this, but isn't sure if she can use her magic on such a huge creature. Rubia guesses she'll only get one shot at using it. Shaw tells her that one shot should be all they need. Shaw also looks at Layla and urges her to leave quickly. Layla doesn't understand what he means. She firmly says she will never abandon her people. Shaw feels worried for her safety. The main character tells the Chinkar brothers to get the mortars ready right away and take them to the eastern rampart. The brothers quickly agree to help. He has 6 shells left, though there was one more, but he gave that to Countess Maluna for protection. Now, he plans to use magic to dry the gunpowder he has stored. The beastmen in the streets are yelling that a dragon is on its way. The girls warn everyone to escape into the forest. The young girl tugs at her dress nervously and asks her big sister what will happen to Farain if a dragon shows up. Maria gently reassures her, telling her not to worry and that she's sure the master of the show will keep everyone safe. Suddenly, the man yells at his assistants, demanding to know what they're doing. He tells them to hurry up and leave. The students quickly start packing up their equipment. One of them points out that they still need their tools. The master tells them that if they make it out alive, they can create new things later and orders them to leave everything behind. 4 hours have passed since Mizuki sent her message. That night, the queen is told that the crossbow has been fired. She asks if the people have gone. He says yes. Layla says they haven't seen the dragon yet, but they need to stay prepared. Shaw secretly hopes he didn't come here, wishing the dragon would decide to go for a walk somewhere far away. Suddenly, a bright light appears in the sky. Everyone turns to the show's host, looking for answers. The main character nervously describes what he's seeing up there. Kaka points and says it's a dragon, and Tika yells that it's on its way. The main character asks Nanami about his size and height. Nanami replies that the dragon's wingspan is 54 meters, and it flies at an altitude of 12 meters. Shaw realizes this can't really happen. Nanami explains that the dragon somehow breaks the laws of physics. The guy says he suspected as much. Layla asks what they're talking about. Shaw turns to her and says that, in theory, it's impossible to fly with that kind of body and those wings. He guesses that the dragon uses magic to make itself lighter. The girl is amazed that he believes dragons have magical powers. Nanami says the dragon is now 900 meters tall. Fifi, Stella, Rubia, and Leela are really worried about it. Then Nanami tells them the dragon's height has dropped to 800 meters. The guy glances up and notices the dragon flying straight towards him. A dragon with its mouth wide open is charging straight at them. The Chick brothers cry out in fear. The host tells them not to worry and reminds them about the intersection point. The dragon is already 200 meters above the ground. Tika says they're almost there. Shaw yells loudly for everyone to fire right away. The team quickly covers their ears as a burst of gunfire erupts. The guy shouts that they landed a hit. The dragon just took some damage. They need to find cover from the strong wind. The dragon lets out a loud roar and flies dangerously close to the wall. The queen tells everyone not to panic and to get ready to fight. She commands all the soldiers to start shooting at the dragon. People shoot arrows from their crossbows, hitting the dragon. Tika and Kaka take aim and fire again. But the dragon is shielded by strong magic. The main character is shocked to see this magical barrier, and Layla is also amazed that the dragon can actually use magic. Suddenly, the main character realizes that unless they break through the dragon's protective magic, their master's magic won't be able to reach or help them. Suddenly, there's another loud explosion. The monster looks furious, and the main character starts to panic. They're curious about what it is. Tika suddenly shouts that she sees a car, leaving the guy feeling confused. He yells that it's Princess Maluna. The girl is behind the wheel. Everyone's shocked they put a mortar on the car. The host calls it ridiculous, and Layla agrees, saying, "That's just how Maluna is." Shaw sees that the dragon's magic shield is getting weaker. He figures the surprise attack broke the dragon's focus. He yells at Ruby to move faster. She looks at Stella, asking for a protective spell. Stella shouts that she gets it, and urges her friend to wipe them all out. Rubia tells everyone to get down, then her staff starts to shine as she prepares a powerful explosion spell. Shaw moves closer to Leela and gently warns her to be cautious. When the spell ends, the dragon vanishes, leaving everyone confused and unsure what just happened. Stella is shocked by what just happened, while Shaw realizes there's no sign of the dragon anymore and tells everyone to stay alert. He asks everyone who's able to help turn the crossbow and reload the mortars. The man stops and stares up in fear. The dragon is untouched and getting ready to strike, while the main character watches in terror. The dragon growls and gets ready to attack. The main character sees that the dragon is about to breathe fire. But the queen quickly calls for everyone to leave and orders all staff to get out immediately. Stella steps in front of the group and tells everyone to stay close behind her, using her magic to protect them. She urges everyone to hurry up. The dragon breathes fire, burning down towers, homes, offices, train tracks, and storefronts. People in the forest are watching everything unfold. The boy holding a book looks scared because he thinks the castle is on fire. Nim is really worried about Mr. Shaw. Stella uses her remaining strength to keep the fire at bay. Meanwhile, Fei steps in to protect Lila. The attack is finally over, and the girl collapses in exhaustion. Shaw calls her name and hurries over to help her. The castle and everything around it are burning. The main character is shocked by how powerful Stella is. He understands that she has now used all her magic, and if the flames return, they won't be able to stop them. They need to take action before he attacks again. The man thinks about how they could fight back. Even Ruby's mortars and magic just bounce off his scales. Everyone realizes there's really nothing they can do. The main character believes that if he stops moving and just starts thinking, everything will be over. He realized it was hard to aim without any markers, so he asked Fei to try aiming right at his eye. The girl looks confused because she doesn't get what the guy means, but he says he has a plan. The dark elf says she gets it and quickly moves ahead. She aims her bow and fires, hitting the target right in the center. The dragon is furious. Layla asks Shaw why he gets so angry, since if the flame shows up again, they're in serious danger. Shaw tells her that getting angry is all part of his plan. He's about to use his double activation magic, aiming it right at the dragon's open mouth. The main character asks the Chikaka brothers to get a mortar ready. They start working on it. Shaw knows the mortar might break as soon as he uses it, but he decides to give it his best shot. The main character uses all his magic to cast a powerful spell. He squeezes the air twice, then channels the spell into his weapon so the Chika brothers know the fire is about to begin. The main character yells out the signal, and everyone starts shooting their guns. The air suddenly gets squeezed, causing a loud blast that pushes everyone backwards. The dragon crashes to the ground with a loud thud. The main character climbs out from the wreckage, hoping things turned out okay. He glances down and nervously asks if the dragon is gone. The man gently shakes her by the shoulders to help her wake up and asks if she's okay. He urges her to snap out of it. Then Shaw tells her that they managed to defeat the dragon. The girl calls out, asking if anyone is still alive. She tells anyone who's alive to make some noise, and the crowd responds with loud, victorious cheers. Rubia runs to the stage and hugs him tightly, tears in her eyes. He tells her he's relieved she's okay, and happy that Stella and Fei made it too. Stella jokingly says his magic nearly got them killed. He laughs and says sorry. The girl tells him that he's actually a really dangerous troublemaker, so she won't let him use compression magic. The main character asks her once more and wants to know why he's not allowed to use it. Rubia says people think she's dangerous because she could show incredible power if anyone truly understands her. Shaw questions her again, remembering talk about extremely high heat, huge pressure, and plasma. He finally gets what she's saying and tells her it's a thermonuclear reaction. Stella is quiet for a moment, then asks him what that actually means. The main character explains that everything around us is made up of tiny particles. He says that when these particles are squeezed together and get extremely hot, they end up breaking apart and scattering in all directions. Then, when they bump into each other and become one, they lose their original weight. The girl asks what happens to something when it loses its weight. Shaw explains that weight turns into a force that's multiplied by the speed of light squared. She asks how fast does light travel. The main character remembers it's about 300,000 kilometers per second, but then decides to put it another way, saying it's 187,500 leagues per second, since 1 league is roughly 1.6 kilometers. The girl is impressed and says, "Wow, that's really fast." Stella asks him how he can speak so casually about something that's been banned for so long. She's curious how he knows all of it. The conversation is a bit awkward, but she chooses to share everything with them. He tells them to pay attention and explains that he has come from a different world. Fei, Layla, and Stella stay completely calm. He doesn't get why they're not reacting and feels a bit confused. Stella says she already expected this, and Layla points out he shared the news a bit late. The show is surprised by how oddly calm they all are. The girl says she didn't believe he was really from across the sea. She explains that someone as unique as him would be unforgettable, and she'd definitely remember meeting him before. The guy is taken aback and admits her explanation actually makes a lot of sense. He looks at Rubia and asks if she believed him. Rubia replies that she actually suspected something like this all along. the main character is completely shocked by her answer. The queen says it's not important where he's from. She explains that the town and castle are a mess right now, and if Farain wants to look like himself again, they'll need his help to fix everything. Rubia asks Shaw if he's planning to stick around with them. The main character speaks to Her Highness and his master. He feels unsure and struggles to find the right words. He isn't really sure what he would do if he got the chance to come back to this world. Shaw wonders if he would like to return. He thinks about sharing the video again, just like he did before. But he has no idea what will happen next. In the end, he decides the answer is no. In that other world, he only had faceless followers. Here, he has real friends. The main character would rather stay with the people of Far Lane, who he sees daily. Shaw smiles and says he's happy to keep living as the master of Far Lane Castle. All the girls are excited and smiling about it. Now, they wonder what to do with the dragon. Layla suggests they should break it down and turn it into gold. Stella agrees, saying that dragons are incredibly valuable. When people discovered their remains centuries ago, they made enough money to buy a small country, and now they've found a fresh one. The girl gives a thumbs up to show she's impressed. The girl says that, according to books, a big gall bladder is supposed to have special healing powers, and if it has stones inside, it's worth a lot of money. The main character brings up meat, and Stella seems confused by the question. Shaw wonders if it's possible to eat dragon meat, but the girl avoids giving a clear answer. Suddenly, Nami mentions that dragon meat can be eaten. Everyone cheers her on and says she's smart. He starts drooling, already dreaming about eating dragon steaks and burgers today. The guy excitedly dashes toward the dragon. In his head, the main character starts wondering if dragon bones could be used to make broth. Rubia is shocked by how he's acting. Layla smiles and says Shaw is always so curious, and that's one of the things they love most about him. Stella smiles and admits she admires him for his open mind and natural curiosity. She calls him a real expert. 1 year later, Farlane is still rebuilding. Beneath the city's repaired walls rests the skeleton of a dragon, which has now become Farlane's new symbol. Everyone is excited about how the country will grow after rebuilding. There's still a lot to be done. While he's focused on his own work, Layla walks over and jokingly says he's making up strange ideas again. Shaw says he's working on a new idea that will let people talk to each other no matter how far apart they are. For example, Layla could have a fun conversation with Princess Maluna even when she's sitting in the castle. The queen gets really excited and asks if it can actually happen and when it might happen, but the guy says he's not sure about that. Stella and Rubia walk into the room. Their friend lets them know he's still busy with some work. The second girl mentions she's hungry and would like a snack. Smiling, the guy agrees and suggests they have some pancakes together.